Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Talk with the Titans, live from London, UK, all the way to the US of A and worldwide. Mills, Kalam, and this is Talk with the Titans. Oh my goodness, have we got a powerful show in store for you today? We've got the brother Ngozi from Team Osiris, part of Amon Ra Squad Matrix, coming in to do some damage. If you guys, don't know who the good brother Ngozi is, I'm sure you guys must be some type of stone for the last 7-8 years or so. All right. So if you boy, all right, we're gonna jump into some real hard body science today. This is something that I know a lot of my followers have been waiting for. A lot of followers, saying let's get days where we have, a lot of the American scholars and teachers and lecturers coming on the scene and really just divulging into some real great information that is really heard of over here on this side of the pond. So let's get it, man. Let's get it. Brother Ngozi, please just welcome yourself in and say peace to the family.
Man, peace and love to the family, man. Team Osiris on Horizon. Street Sufi is the movement. I really appreciate, what I'm saying, you, brother Kalam. You also are a member or alliance dealing with Team Osiris. You're my good brother. You've been around for a long time, and I'm really happy to be here today. I'm no longer. I haven't been part of the Amara Squad Matrix for a long time. I created Team Osiris, and we branched off. Those brothers doing their own thing. And we got our own thing going. So we move independently as Team Osiris. Street Sufi is the movement, but Team Osiris is on the horizon. So my background, I was a member of Amon Squad for a long time. I was known as the mad scientist. I teach science. I was one of the first to introduce the scientific understanding to the way people deal with science today. A scientific understanding or entertaining the thought of dealing with science, putting people in that direction to really focus more into it. I have a degree in biology. If people know my background, outside of that, back in the day, we was getting it in. I was one of the first to also coin the term pseudo that everyone's using. Not saying I'm the first person that said it, but I'm saying the first person to present it to the conscious community. I think Brother Wesley Muhammad also said it because he has a college background or whatever. And we've been getting it in for a minute, man. Going against, people who call themselves these different things. We used to bang on the Hebrews and bang on the Moors and everything else. We also talk historical facts, and we presented scientific methodology, understanding scientific methodology and references. You have to use references for everything when you really want to get into true scholarship, understanding the proper methodology and regimen of how to deal with things. So Ngozi is a part of that leap within consciousness of the step of our evolution in the community into the direction that we're going in now. Also with the support of other brothers as well that made way for the new understanding that the movement or the conscious community have today overall. We all played our role, everybody, even those who we classify as pseudos. It gave us an understanding to look into things to see what's right over what's wrong, and that's what's up. And that's what we need.
100%. Oh man. So listen, I know a lot of people have been waiting for this show, and I know some of you guys may not have got the notification or the alert. So I'm going to ask you guys, right, who are here right now, please hit up the like button. We already know how YouTube likes to play games at times. So if you just hit up the like button, make sure that this show just get as much amount of interaction as possible. So like it, hit the share button as well. So other people, it will aid in other people being notified to say that we're live right now on Titans TV. That would be an awesome help. Thank you in advance. And of course, if you got any questions, right? You know what you got to do. There's just two things that you need to do to get your questions actually read out or answered today. And that's simply hitting us up with the super chat. So the super chat will just pop up. It'll get all bright and bold, and we'll see your message that you're leaving us. The second way you can do it as well is also by hitting us up via tagging on Titans TV. These are the only two ways I'm actually going to be able to read comments today out loud for everybody to hear. or pin them up for everybody to see, or get my brother to actually answer them. So just those two things, super chats and tagging Titans TV, you're gonna be in. All right. So you know what? Like, brother, I need you, yeah, just to give us a quick overview of the different things we're going to be touching today. I know it's kind of in the title, but I know I've missed out a couple of things. So if you could just give us a quick overview before we actually go into it, that would be perfect.
Okay, well, I think that it's important for us. I think, okay, I'm going to go through it. I think it's important for the community or the people to know the origin of man. Where do we come from? Because it's a big people are really into understanding this social construct that we call race, or what is humanity. So we'll be getting into the origin of man. We'll be getting into the understanding of African spirituality. Particularly, we'll be dealing with the Nile Valley civilization and how they dealt with spirituality, which is also African as well. We'll be breaking that down to see if it matches up with the Abrahamic understanding of a God, per se, in the sense of believing. We'll be also talking about race. Does it exist? Is it factual? Or if it's not, or is it just a social construct? And we'll be talking about what causes the differences to make people appear the way they appear, and think the way they think, and function the way they function. So we'll be just getting into it and getting into it. But the spirituality, I think, is something that we really need to talk about. Like, well, we're Africans atheists or not, or is atheism natural to us, or that what is it? Not to disrespect those out there who are atheists. I mean, everybody have their role to play on the planet, but we just need to talk about it. How did they view or see their have their understanding of the divine or consciousness, or what is a god? How did they come into play? We need to talk about that, because this is something that we're trying to get together in our understanding, and our understanding of our human experience daily. This is questions that humans ask, especially us. We're trying to find our place and our sense of being, and gain understanding back to who we were and what we originally thought. So I like to get into all that, just those basic things a little bit.
All right. Perfect. So, all right, family, I just want to know, are you lot ready for this now? Are you lot ready for this? So I've always been received a lot of questions and a lot of reproach, okay? Because we're so used to hearing the Adam and Eve story, okay? Whether you're Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hebrew, and even if you're atheist, we've all heard of the Adam and Eve story, haven't we? So I want to know, does the Adam and Eve story have any truth in it, or can you give us the true breakdown of where humanity actually sprung out from or evolved from?
Well, Adam and Eve is mythology. Every human has a story to tell about the origin of man, and it's a mythology. It's mythology that comes from the Middle East. Um, Adam is not a historical figure, nor was Eve a historical figure. It's allegorical and it's metaphorical. Adam represents the blood of man, or red in the face. Eve represents the awa, which means to change. Um, it's symbolic. It's not literal. Is there something true to the story? I mean, it depends on how you read it. It can go in either direction. In the Bible, it talks about in the beginning, man, God created man and woman. It never said directly who at first, before in the next chapter it says, and then he created Adam and Eve. So it depends on how you see it. From me looking at it from a scientific perspective, I'll break it down like, the beginning of man. Even in Ifa, it talks about how, not to go everywhere, but I'm going to focus on Adam and Eve. It talks about a set of people that were created before Adam. And if I look at it from my own, and this is not how the people in the Middle East was writing it when they wrote it. They didn't think like this. But from my own perspective, the way I look at it, the first form of man was those first stages of archaic humans before we exist, and then Adam and Eve, which represents the new rise of our Homo sapiens species, which is thinking man, or wise man, or whatever you want to call it. When the cerebral cortex becomes more complex, and we have a new way of viewing, understanding, no longer like our early archaic hominid population that exists prior before. And when I'm going to say it again, the people in the Middle East did not look at it like that, because they had no understanding of the evolutionary changes of different spaces of different phases of our species. I'm just saying that's how I see it. So bottom line to the answer is Adam and Eve is mythical. The true story to our species is we start in Africa. um, you have to go through the different stages that we went through before our human phase, which starts with Homo habilis. Before Homo habilis, we had our archaic predecessors, which is Australopithecus afarensis, and before that, you have Ardipithecus. You have also different stages of Australopithecus before you get into Australopithecus afarensis. You also have Ardipithecus, and before Ardipithecus, from the fossils that they found was Tomai, which is Sahelanthropithecus. So we went through different stages to become what we are within this last 7.5 million to 8 million years. And the human evolution story is not a simple story. Modern Homo sapien developed traits from all over Africa. All over Africa. It's a pan-African movement when it comes to our species of how we develop. We didn't develop in one spot. You might develop a trait for your face in Morocco, while you develop the trait for your legs in Algeria, and your feet in Ghana, or certain ways of your hands in Togo. So what I'm saying is that, for example, the bipedalness in our species, that's an old evolutionary trait that developed when we were able to stand up upright and walk longer, not from Sahelanthropithecus, which have similar features from certain patterns from the waist down, but with Australopithecus or Ardipithecus, she was able to walk upright longer. So that trait amongst us itself is over 4 million years old, and it exists within you because we're still bipedal. We still can walk upright. We still walk longer than any other groups of the great apes. So with that being said, we are classified, when you deal with our taxonomy, we're primates, and we're also great apes. So are orangutans, gorillas, and chimpanzees, but we're more closer to our bonobo cousin. So with that being said, and he's a great ape as well. So with that being said, great apes doesn't have a tail. They also have flat nails. They also have the rectangular orbit around the eye socket, which allows them to look forward. Similar, a pancreas, a cerebral cortex, the setting of the spinal cord, or a flexible spinal cord, the rotating shoulder blade. These are the similarities or certain traits that we have as great apes. But each and one of us are our own unique branch of great ape, which allows us to function in our own way. Not saying that Homo sapien is a chimpanzee, because we are not, but we have a common ancestor that split around 8 million to 9 million years ago. We're part of that family. We're part of that kingdom, and it doesn't degrade you and make you less than what you were. It does not stop your divinity, because I'm here to not separate spirituality from evolution. I believe that evolution is a process that happens in order for our developmental phase to adjust to what we are now as a setting system to allow us to experience things organically. So you really can't separate the spirituality from the natural processes of life.
Woo-hoo! This is what I love. This is what I miss. All right, I'm telling you guys here, this is the type of culture, this is the type of experience, this is the type of vibe that I myself personally grew up in, with brothers such as brother Ngozi, sitting down with brothers such as Khufu, Jonathan Owens, the Magi, Uncle Kep, the real black atheist. Okay, we have some great scholars, great minds over here on Titans TV. If you haven't seen some of the past shows, right, like, please go back into the archives, check out the Talk with the Titans archive. You could see some of the great works that we've been dropping for the last however many years, right? Before I say anything more, all right, when my good brother here is speaking, I need you guys, okay? This is class. You're in a university lecture hall right now, right? We're not in primary school. We're not in high school. We're not even in college. We're now sitting here as postgraduates. I'm not even going to say undergraduates. You're postgraduate level. So please go and grab yourself a pen or a pencil, get yourself a paper, open up a separate tab on your Google. So when the brother is dropping some of these names, right? Dropping some of these names, right? I need you guys here to quickly Google and stay up on speed. And I'm gonna warn you right now, okay? This is Chi-Town's greatest, right? Some people will say, right, he's speaking too fast. Nah, you're just thinking too slow. Right? So please get ready for this. Yeah, get ready for this. I'm warning you lot now. Get ready for this. For all of you guys who've just tuned in, shouts out to man like COE up in the building with us. We've also got Miss London Europe. I know my good brother Ngozi would love to speak with the brother Sarah Garvey. You've seen some great videos of yourself and elsewhere. So yeah, man, the family's up in the building. But please hit the like button, hit the share button, let everybody know that we're live right now. Sci-Fi Living is up in the building as well. Baba Yega's up in the building. Ashley Young's up in the building. Yeah, please, please, yeah, please. I need you guys to get ready for this. All right. So I think we've kind of spoken about this before, but I want to know about the mutations of what is quote unquote the different race groups. Okay, what was the very first race group? I'm utilizing this because, from my understanding and knowledge, I like to think that race is a social construct. So actually, I'm going to back up. Is race a social construct? Or does it have any scientific basis at all?
Race is totally a social. Race is totally is really a social construct. Absolutely. When it comes to our species, we're all Homo sapien sapien. There are only small genetic signatures or small changes which allows us to look different when you deal with clines or when you go down to the demi level and understanding evolution and biology. Certain alleles might express itself differently, which allows us to look different. But overall, race is completely a social construct. We are all Homo sapiens sapiens. We all have a cerebral cortex that functions the same way. Our dendrites and synapses fires up the same way. When we're sick and down, when we go to the doctor, they're able to monitor your pattern and organic behavior of what you function as a species based off the physical anatomy of Homo sapiens sapien, regardless to what you look like. If a European catch a fever, or African man catch a fever, is going to express itself the same way. Cancer, which is abnormal cells that divide uncontrollably, which destroys system cells and bodies and completely, and then eventually organs, and then you die. Once the abnormal cell develops in Homo sapiens sapien, it responds the same way. If a person has asthma, the way it affects the lungs, whether you're African or European or Arab, it responds the same way. Just looking at certain elements and certain things is going to respond the same way. Now, some people could be prone to certain conditions and based off the environment that they develop in, and it might not affect you like it can affect them because they're adjusted or adapted to it a little bit more better because the people prolonged it much longer, so they adjusted to it. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to human Homo sapiens sapien, we're the same. So you have like small changes like with coloration or morphologies and phenotypes, which allows people to look different. You have SLC2485, you have MSD12, you have DDB1, you have OCA2, you have HER2, you have SLC45A2. So you have to deal with the different traits that humans develop based off geographical location. For example, most people of darker pigmentation that develop in equatorial parts of the world, especially like sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, once you block out MSD12 with two genes, you block that out, that allele, it allows melanocytes to abstract into the form of uromelanin, which is driven by the amino acid tyrosine, which allows us to be more darkly pigment. The reason why our hair is thick and coarse is because we develop in tropical zones to fight off heat. To release heat to keep the body cool in equatorial borders. Most people with that's from those zones, zone 1 particularly, they'll have more of an afro texture type hair, bushy type hair texture, and the oils in the hair. It might not be as more prevalent as you'll find in people that exist in the northern latitudes that have more oils in their hair. But again, these differences that we find is small when you go into the cline level. But the smallness does allow us to see a big difference on the surface. But when it comes to our physical anatomy and our way of functioning as a species, we're completely Homo sapiens sapien. Race is completely a social construct, and we have to understand that.
All right. Yeah, there is how can I put it? There is a hashtag that is currently being formulated, okay? And it is I'm your daddy hashtag. Okay, the hashtag I'm your daddy. So could you tell us, okay, who is humanity's we're all linked together, but who is the daddy, and what geographic location can we all trace back our, how can I put it, our ancestral Eve and our ancestral Adam? Where can we trace them back to? What geographic location and what time frame? Okay.
Africa. But again, the story isn't simple when it comes to Africa. The whole continent is the garden of Eden to humanity. But when it comes to our development, okay, I'm going to deal with a specific haplogroup, A00, which is possibly 200, as they go back and forth. It can go from 276,000 to 338,000 years old. And it's found amongst the Mbuti pygmies in Central and Western Africa. Now, based off Jebel Hood, who was found in Morocco, in Rabat, Morocco, if I'm not mistaken, he's 315,000 to 300,000 years old. With that said, but he was an archaic Homo sapien or archaic Homo sapien. He wasn't completely Homo sapien, just like Homo hetero man that they found in Ethiopia, not Homo man 1 or Homo man 2, but hetero man. So these are archaic Homo sapien. But if we base
real quickly, is that he, that archaic AA0, is that also related to Carolina? How many years ago there was a guy in South Carolina?
Yeah. Mr. Perry, and the marker went back 338,000 years. But then if you look at it, sometimes they go back 276,000. But when they went back into Cameroon, they found that same marker amongst the Mbuti pygmies, and they found it amongst other groups near Central and Western Africa. So with that being said, if we look at the location where Jebel Hood died at, in Morocco, and they found other fossils there too. He wasn't from there. He wasn't from Morocco. He died there. You have other Homo sapien fossils that you find in Ethiopia. You found one in Sudan, which is 100,000. You have the one in Ethiopia, hetero man, which is 176,000. You got Homo man 1 and Homo man 2, which is 196,000. They just found the jawbone in Israel, which went back possibly, if I'm not mistaken, 100 close to Homo man, 176,000 to 180,000. But either way, if we base it off looking at the mark and the location of where it is and understanding the climate of West Africa, it leans more, and they're not saying this yet because they're still trying to put the story together. But if people with common sense that look at it overall, it leans more close to Homo sapien development overall, from all the different changes and absorbing things from all over the continent. The complexity of what we formed into right now, possibly in West Africa, not East Africa like what they thought, or not in North Africa. And I'm just basing it off Jebel Hood and also the genes that they found from the 6,000-year-old skeleton or 4,000-year-old skeleton in South Africa. And they found that he also had DNA that went back 276,000 to 300,000 years, 300,000 years ago. Based off DNA that they abstract from the fossils that they was able to preserve from South Africa. So with that being said, the daddy to humanity, with our species of humanity, Homo sapien, develops in Africa. But I believe that what we formed as Homo sapien overall, from all the different changes that we developed from all over the continent, probably was in the western part of Africa, near Central, in between Central and Sudan.
And how does the Khoisan people tie into this?
Well, the Khoisan people were isolated. They separated. You have to understand, before you had the Khoisan, you had another group of people that was in the northern part of Africa called the Tyrian culture. And most of these people have the A marker, but they're not A00. You got to understand they're different terminal SNPs or subclades of A. A00 is just at the top. You have A00, you have A1, and you have A1BT. You have to understand the different terminal SNPs. So with that being said, the Khoisan are old, but they really wasn't from South Africa. They just been down there for 100,000 years. Before the Khoisan was there, they were just Khoi or Khoikhoi group, and then the San came later. They also are discovering amongst the Khoisan that they have some genetic signatures that was also originally introduced down there possibly 3,000 years ago from Cushitic people that brought down certain pairs of alleles of SLC24A5, which causes some of the not overall, but some of them to have light skin, because light skin, the gene for light skin was also in Africa, but it was in dormant. It didn't have to express itself compared to what it did outside of Africa. So with that being said, there's been a lot of exchange and swapping in between, even amongst some Khoisan, recently as 3,000 years. So the Khoisan are old. They do have old genetic signatures, but I wouldn't call them the oldest. You get what I'm saying? Far as linguistic, their click sound, their language, their form of communication, and that's old as well. That's more that language family that they speak is more older than most of the African languages families that you find. The Niger-Congo language family, the Nilo-Saharan, and also the Afro-Asiatic branch of human language. The Khoisan and the Hadza, Hadza, that click sound is one of the oldest forms of communication to deal with language when it comes to talking. So the Khoisan, I'll say, have one of the most oldest preserved culture of original Homo sapien culturally. They do have ancient genetic signatures, but what you're going to find out is that a lot of their genetic signatures that you find mostly amongst Khoisan, you can also find it in little sprout hotspots in Africa all over. Like you can go into testing a Nur and a Dinka, and you might find the same genetic signatures in some cases based, the so-called sex chromosome or haplogroup, which doesn't recombine. You can also find it amongst them sometimes. So what I'm saying is that they were an isolated group that's been in South Africa for a long time, but they also have some things that has been recently introduced. So the Khoisan is a good example of Homo sapiens sapien culturally, and based off some genetic signatures that they have that's extremely old, but it's not the oldest compared to the people in Cameroon with the Mbuti pygmies who have this A00 marker. Their marker is way older if we want to base it off haplogroups. But we got to understand something about haplogroups does not determine who you are overall. Your overall DNA composition is based off your autosomal DNA. So you can have A00 walking around, but still be autosomally 45 to 30% European. That doesn't determine who you are overall. You just have an old, deep ancestral lineage, which goes back to whatever form of man at the timeline that it developed. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you. So if I'm hearing you correctly, okay, we're gonna be saying this. If I'm hearing you correctly, let me just make sure. You know what? Let me switch it back up, because if everybody's hearing me correctly, let me know if you lot hearing me correctly, and I can actually switch it away from using my phone and go back to this way. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So yeah, family. Hopefully that's going to be working just fine with you guys. So if I'm hearing my brother correctly, are we saying this, that the oldest cultural group, community that exists is going to be the Khoisan people, but the oldest in terms of ancestry, archaic, would be those pygmies, Mbutu pygmies in Cameroon? Is that a fair summarization?
I'll say that. I'll say the oldest Mbuti pygmies have the oldest. They have one of the oldest genetic signatures. But here's another thing: being a pygmy isn't ancient like that, because let's think about it. When they found, well, I'm going to say you, because people that's finding things are the same species as us. So every time whatever group of people find it, it don't matter if it's an Asian, European, science belongs to humanity. So I'm going to say our species. So when we found Jabella Hood, he wasn't a midget. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to call him, no disrespect. He wasn't a pygmy. I'm sorry. When they found Omo Man 1 and Omo Man 2, they wasn't pygmies. When they found, so what I'm saying is that trait also is something that was adapted based off insulin growth factor 1 condition from when these human populations sprouted out in West Africa. See, here's the thing about us in West Africa. West Africa has some of the oldest, in some features, oldest archaic human genes. They call them ghost genes or ghost African genes. And they also found it amongst the Yoruba recently, certain archaic traits. And they found it amongst the Mindis. West Africa has a deep story. You have a lot of archaic things going on. So here's the thing. Before we got into West Africa, there were already an archaic population of humans settling there. Me personally, and I'm going to ride with, Chris Stringer, and I'm going to agree with Michael Hammer. I honestly believe with them that this archaic hominid or ghost population was some form of Homo heidelbergensis. That's what was hovering around tropical West Africa before we got there. And then you have a wave of people. Now remember, Homo heidelbergensis is the predecessor of Homo sapiens sapien, Neanderthal, and Denisovan. This is archaic black man. He gave rise to it, and I believe that this is possibly the ghost species that was living in tropical West Africa, in Nigeria, Cameroon, and in different parts. So you have different waves of people coming in and out. You got them hovering down there, and possibly our developmental phase. And from that, you have another group of people. I'm not even going to get into people with haplogroup E, EV38. This terminal SNP or this subclade of it, and a form of EV38 before it rises into EM2. Because if you want to go back, when EV38 formed from EP2, which formed from EP177, which goes all the way back to EM96, that might lead you somewhere in tropical Saudi Arabia 100,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago before going back. Now you gotta understand, humans been going backwards and forth for a long time, and there's a difference between scientific Adam and Eve in the later Eurasian Adam and Eve, or what they like to classify now as scientific Noah or Eurasian Noah. Not they just use the biblical characters based off of what people understand. They're not literally talking about Adam and Eve and Noah. So what I'm saying is that so you have these Homo heidelbergensis, or this ghost population of archaic humans that you find there, and you also find these traits in the Yoruba, and you also find it amongst with the Mindi. Bottom line is there's a deep story, a complex story in tropical Central and West Africa that humanity haven't even discovered yet, and it's the predecessor of our. It's one of the most important places where I think that a lot of research is they're going to start focusing on more. And I mean they have to. So when you ask the question with the Mbuti pygmies, the oldest, I'm gonna say they have older traits. They also have some intermixing in between with recent tribes that's been coming and going. They just have some of the oldest traits that marker is very old, and there's no telling how long it's been there. You feel me? Their culture might not be as old as the Khoisan culture. So basically, Africa, the fragments of certain cultures and certain genetic signatures is scattered out. So you might find an old trait here from somewhere, and then you might find an old trait here from somewhere. It's all scattered out all over the continent. You get what I'm saying? So I'm going to say this. Genetically, some genetic signatures that you find amongst the Mbuti pygmies are old. Culturally, I wouldn't say that their culture is old, but I wouldn't say it is as old as the Khoisan. And even with the Khoisan is closest to the oldest culturally that we can find, but I wouldn't say it's the oldest, but it's closest to the oldest because some things has died out and went extinct. You get what I'm saying?
100%. Listen, before we continue, family, let me know if you're enjoying the show so far. And again, I've told you guys before, if you want to get our attention, there's two things you got to do. Do as what the Queen Baba Yaga has done over here. All right, let me just drop it. Let me see if we can get it up nice and big for you. All right. Right here. All right, is by hitting us up with a super chat. All right, the Queen has hit us up with $20 and says, "Here, thank you for this subject. What I've been waiting for, especially since my daughter just found out she is 1.5 black from Africa." All right, salute, salute, salute. All right, so the second way of getting in contact with us is by doing this. Here we go. There you go. Is by simply tagging Titans TV, and we can get your comments read out. So it said, Homo sapiens origins are all over the world. There is no first human. Our DNA changes with every disease we encounter, even the common cold. This is academic research and documented. All right. Great content. Hopsky says, great content makes a huge change educational. Man, give thanks and praise. So I don't know. Did you have any, statements to make to the Queen, who Baba Yaga, who hit us up on the super chat? And another thing, actually, I wanted to know how, in your opinion, how productive and accurate is the ancestral DNA tests that's being taken, or that's been promoted so far?
A lot of these DNA companies it's for profit. It's another form of entertainment being driven by geneticists. It tells you who you are highly. It can't tell you who you are overall, but it tells you who you are highly. So, for example, according to my DNA research, I am 70% sub-Saharan African, between 69% and 70% sub-Saharan African. I know directly that my mother is a first-generation continental African, born in my mother was born in France. She came in when she was 2. Her mother was Algerian. Her father was Fula. He died of tuberculosis in 1964. My father's an African American. So, with that being said, it tells you who you are highly. So, I'm Fula, and based off I know I'm Fula Fulani, based off my ancestral DNA composition, and I'm based off what I know my mother is, my family is. And also, I know what my African American struggle has been through with my father. So the DNA companies, they're good. They tell you who you are, but we gotta understand. For example, I took a test with National Geographic and 23andMe and Ancestral DNA, and they were all close, but they were semi-different. And you have to understand, these tests is based off the samples that they have. A lot of it could be biased because they don't have a lot of samples from Africans. It's fit for people that were confused Europeans in North America, because white Europeans in North America, and I'm just talking, they don't really know directly what lineage of Europe that they come from. So you can get a common white American who might be 23% French, 33% Swedish, 2% German. They're trying to find their sense of identity. Being an American itself is hybrid. It's a hybrid cultural society that we live in. You get what I'm saying? So us of being Africans of the diaspora, we were mixed with multiple groups of Southwest and Central Africa. You know, Yoruba, Igbo, Fulani, you know what I'm saying, Akan, you know what I'm saying, some Bantu speaking groups that were also brought over here. So it tells you who you are highly, but you have to understand, like, for example, testing with short tandem repeats, when they monitor the DNA or get the samples from the PCR that they use, short tandem repeats couldn't really determine my single nucleotide polymorphosis or my SNP directly from if I was E1B1A7A or EP252 or if I was EM191. So it's highly certain that I'm EM2 paternally, but the specific terminal SNP, they say different things based off them doing it from their specific method that they use. So what I'm saying is the DNA companies, they are good. They tell you who you are highly, but I wouldn't put all my faith into it, because if you go to another company, you might find some semi differences, and it's based off the samples that they have. And when I can tell you, when it comes to the African story, they don't have a lot to say compared to when it comes to talking about the European story that you might have, the narrative that they use. But I think it's a new form of entertainment. So I think it's cool for people to get it and find out, you know, who you are highly or what you are highly. But I wouldn't put all my faith into it. They can't tell you particularly you are 100% Yoruba. 100. They can just tell you the samples that they see that matches up with samples from populations in those areas. You get what I'm saying? People move around. I mean, you got to think about it. The Yoruba culture isn't no older than what, 2,700 years old. Before that, they were somebody else, and before that, they was the direction that these people was coming in, and where they was coming from before they formed into this. So I think it's entertainment. It is good, but it's good for people to know, because it gets you excited. But then if you give your DNA to 5 different companies, it might say 5 different things a little bit. Like, for example, all of my test samples told me that I was the same amount of sub-Saharan African, but the story changed a little bit differently based off, you know, what they had. But it was telling me who I am highly based off the story that I know. So it gives you some truth, but I don't think the storyline of Africa, they don't have enough of the storyline to explain African history directly. You get what I'm saying? So it's good entertainment driven by geneticists. They get money off of it. I mean, everybody want to know something. You feel me?
All right. So you know what? Just to go back a tiny bit. You know, TDS Dave asked you, could you define ghost genes? What exactly are ghost genes?
Well, ghost genes are old archaic genes that they find from hominids, from humans, but it's not from modern humans. It's a ghost population. They don't really know. For example, they found in the Yoruba recently some archaic features. It's a ghost population of humans, but it's not from our modern brand of human. It's archaic. They just don't know what archaic branch of humans it's coming from. They don't know if it's from Homo heidelbergensis or possibly an extinct human population that they haven't discovered yet. So it's uncertain. So these genes is found amongst them autosomally, and it might be found, I'm thinking, in their human leukoantigens and their immunity, based off how their immune system functions. Because I know that these ghost genes that the Yoruba have, it helps defend cancer or abnormal cells to a degree. It's benefits in having it. So you can look into that and look up ghost genes of Yoruba is beneficial for cancer or abnormal cell development or tumors.
Okay, please just check a few things. Bear with me, family. I know my internet is just trying to play up as well. Not today, Satan, not today. Oh, man. So again, family, if you've got any more questions, right, all you got to do is simply tag Titans TV or drop us up, hit us up with a super chat, and we'll make sure we try our very best to read out your comments or ask your questions or highlight them on screen. Takia Watt says they have access to less than 0.001% of the DNA. From that, they will tell you that you are 40% X Y, or Z. All right. Um, all right. So yeah, TDS Dave, he's happy. All right. Salute to TDS Dave. So let me get into this now. So could you tell us a bit more about the out of Africa theory? What is that exactly?
Well, the out of Africa theory, is the story where humans or Homo sapiens, not just Homo sapiens, but Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, before us, all were leaving out of Africa, but we're going to focus more on our species. Um, Haplogroup CTM168 and mitochondrial DNA L3. These are the groups that left out of Africa and gave rise to everybody that you see outside of Africa today. Now, we're going to follow the oldest phylogenetic tree from Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve, from A00 paternally to A0 to A1A to AM6 to AM51 to the A1BT, which branches off into BT, which branches off in the Great Rift Valley to CTM168, which later on diverges into the branch of DE. DE splits, another population goes into CF, the CF splits. Later on, those C population goes into Australia, other groups go into different parts of the world. CT splits, goes all the way down into some branches going to DE. And this is why it's a possibility that the independent DE developed somewhere in tropical Arabia or East Africa and back migrated and went back into the continent, found refugium in Ethiopia, became multiple subclades or terminal SNPs, and then went back and populated the rest of Africa. In our brother's signature of terminal SNP, the independent D, you found amongst those dark-skinned people in the Andaman Islands with the single D marker, or our Australoid cousins in Australia with the CM130 and other branches of C. So the out of Africa theory is based off those people that left out of Africa that branches off from that paternal CTM168 and mitochondrial DNA L3, which gave rise to mitochondrial DNA M and N, and branches off and give rises to RO. ROA give rises to the U, and the U goes into U2, U3, U4, U6, into all the different populations you see all over outside of Africa today before coming back in. You know what I'm saying? Some of them did back migrate in, like U6 back migrated in, M1A1 back migrated in almost 30,000 years ago. So this is the out of Africa theory, talking about the story of humanity outside of Africa and where did they come from. Your phone went out, King. Your speaker went off. You got your speaker on mute.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I know we got
Yes,
various different people that's joined us today on inside the comment section, and I just want to make sure that they are represented as well. So I'm pretty sure we have a lot of Europeans inside of the comment section. If you're from Asia or from Arabia as well, please let me know so I can ask a specific question related to yourselves. So the European haplogroup, or the origins of the European phenotype itself, is that something that originated, I think it was in Iran, roughly Iran, and migrated upwards, northward, not upwards and also westwards? Could you give us a breakdown of that?
Well, yeah. The European, he has a funny story. Before he was in, you have three waves of people that makes up Europe. You have a first wave, which might the oldest population made it to Europe around 40,000 years ago, and this is where you find Kostikiman there in Russia. The late Pleistocene population, which is those Mesolithic Europeans who were darker skinned with slightly woolly hair. They look similar to people to Australoids to a degree, slightly woolly, around 40,000 years ago. Then you have those farmers that came from the Middle East, with which comes from the Levant or near Anatolia, which spread it over there and brought farming over there around 8,000 years ago. And they brought certain genetic signatures that you find up there today. They were the ones that brought the SLC2485 mutation. And I'm going to get into that mutation, which caused pale skin. When you change the amino acid position to 111, you change the position of amino acids to 111, it changes position from alanine to threonine, and people develop paler skin or lighter skin, which is sodium potassium exchange of calcium 55, SLC2485, which formed into lighter skin. And that happens somewhere in Anatolia, but the oldest place they found it is amongst fossils near the Georgian area around 13,000 years ago. It spread it rapidly in Anatolia, and then it hit Europe around 8,000 to 7.3 thousand years ago. Not to mention, you also find certain traits of this in the northern parts of Europe, in those Scandinavian zones, in certain areas, because this gene was already, again, light-skinned genes is not, it was endormant in Africa. These genes were already in us, especially OCA1. I'm not OCA1, but the OCA gene, which is a form of albinism, that was endormant. I mean, you know, albinism can happen to any organism. You find it in birds, you can find it anywhere. So that was already endormant. Certain genes were already in Africa, but it expressed itself outside of Africa based off the low latitudes that people were moving in because it was beneficial. There is no need to be equatorial dark in a highly latitude zone like zone 3. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be beneficial to you. So it makes sense for you to change that alanine into threonine, and that 100 amino acid changes position into 111 for you to form lighter skin. It makes sense. But here's the thing. So phenotypically, the Iran it's partially true, but that more, if you want to base it off the morphology, the thin nose and the long oval face, that trait is also not really only indigenous to Europe. You also find people that develop in hot, arid environments in certain parts of Africa that can develop those traits or phenotypes too. So if you want to base it off the morphology, the thin nose and the long oval face, you know, you can find it also in the continent. You could be dark skinned with those features. So you know what I'm saying? That's the phenotype, the morphology, the skeleton, the way the skeleton is, thin nose, long face, or whatever. But yeah, it's true. And to a degree, those farmers who were related to those groups in Anatolia before going near the Caucasus, they did have that morphology where it became more protruded and migrated into the near the Georgian area before bringing agriculture into Europe. But before that, when you get into the Mesolithic Europeans, like Cheddar Man that they found over there where you at in England, you know, he didn't have, if you look at his morphology, his skeleton, it didn't look like the common, so quote unquote Caucasoid that you find amongst Georgian populations like Albanians and Armenians and all those other groups of so-called Caucasoid that was deified by the anthropologists in the 17th century, 18th century. He looked at that phenotype and named, you know, based off that phenotype, he made that the title for all Europeans, calling them Caucasoid because he was so obsessed with those people in the Georgian area. If you deal with the history of how the Caucasians become this so-called phenotype. So yeah, it goes through Iran to a degree, goes up there, and then it goes into Europe. But before that, the morphology of Mesolithic Europeans, they didn't look like that. They look more close to Australoid to a degree. And then you got to deal with the Yemeniya population that brought the Indo-European language into Europe. So European history goes a long way, bruh. Like you have the Mesolithic Europeans, the Neolithic Europeans, then you got the Indo-European speakers who come from the Russian steppes who came in and brought the Indo-European language. So it's not a simple story to Europe. They got a lot of they got a semi-complex story as well. It's not one population that makes up Europe. They have, you know, different stories that makes up who they are cumulatively.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Listen, family, like I know you guys are watching, I know you guys are tuned in, right? But I need to make sure that you guys are real interactive with us. Okay, we've got Ngozi, the mad scientist, baby. Like I haven't seen Ngozi on like camera for like years now, like coming up to like 2 years. Yeah, up to 2 years. I personally haven't seen him grace anybody's screen that I can remember. I don't know, Ngozi, if you have been on, but you have to let me know. So, like, this is like one of these, you know, phenomenal occasions, these spectacular occurrences. You know, the synchronicity within inside of the universe has finally converged for this moment in time. And if you're off work in the UK, please make sure you drop some of your questions for us. If you're in the US, I know it's early, baby. Yeah, well, please drop some of your questions. And if you're just re-watching this, all right, please leave some comments down below, all right, in the comment section. And hopefully we can spiral off and do maybe a second show to it, or, you know, we can get somebody else to answer these questions inside of the comment section, right? Or we could get Brother Ngozi to come on and just drop a few more gems inside of the comment section for us. But right now, I've got another super chat coming in, all right, from GG Consciousness. Actually, got two. Let's just drop. So, family, all right, I'm going to go straight to these individuals first. But you know what you got to do. Just hit us up with a super chat or hit us up with a tag in of Titans TV, and we'll make sure we get some of your questions either screen shared like this, read out and answered. So, can you speak on the origins of E and its subclades. So this is haplogroup E and its different subclades.
Oh yeah. Well, haplogroup E again, it branches off of DE, and again, it's a small. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a large possibility, and this is the marker that most of us have. The brothers from the diaspora, most West Africans and Central Africans, you Kalam, you possibly had a marker. African Americans, we had, and even the Egyptians, they had all of us are E. Somalian, all of us are E. It's just we have different terminal SNPs, different subclades. So here's the thing: the oldest base, not basal, which means branch out base, but the oldest base E, EM96, who branches off of DE, possibly developed in tropical Saudi Arabia, or tropical Arabia, before Arabia looked the way it looked now. Arabia went through different phases. You got to deal with the different glacier periods. The Arabia that you see today is not the same Arabia that existed 100,000 years ago. You know, they found tools over there, which is called Nubian complex. And I want y'all to look that up, Nubian complexes, where they found complex tools over there around 100,000 years ago that were similar to the tools that you find in Sudan. And this might be partially responsible, a part of the reason for the out of Africa theory, these tools that they found in Saudi Arabia. Now, here's the thing. These early Eurasians, which descend from CTM168, which is labeled as Eurasian Atom, they were African. They looked African. They didn't have a lot of differences between the population that they descend from. Remember, CTM168 descent from the Great Rift Valley. He was a descendant of BT. His brother is still in Africa, BM60, which is the Hadza. The Hadza is BM60, HADZA. They're still there. So CTM168 descends out of the Great Rift Valley. Now, he gives rise to this DE, which branches off into two different terminal SNPs, which is independent EM96 and single D. Now, the single D you can find in Tibet, you can find it in Japan with the Anu, you can find it in Tibet, and you can also find it amongst those beautiful people, the Andaman Islands, those Andamanese people, the Angay or the Sentinelese people, the ones that just killed that guy, the Christian missionary that went over there and he was just killed. Those people are haplogroup D, and they're all the way in Southeast Asia. You know what I'm saying? Off of India. So EM96 possibly developed in Saudi Arabia, but it went back into East Africa. Now, again, it's just a large. They think like Michael Hammer and the geneticists, they're going back on, and they actually said this initially that E was Eurasian, but now they're going backwards and forth. But it's a large chance that E developed in Saudi Arabia and it went back into Ethiopia. And as it goes back into Ethiopia, it spent so much time in East Africa, it developed these different terminal SNPs from EM96 to EP177 to EP2, EP2 into EV38, EM215. EM215 splits off and becomes E1B1, which goes into EV68 into EM78, which goes into the later branches of E1B1B, which is what ancient Egyptians, modern Somalians, northern Ethiopians, Berber, which has the EM81 subclade. Most of those cats have that. And people that descend from tropical West Africa, who's a descendant of the EV38, which goes into West Africa and becomes EM2. And this is funny. Remember the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his mythology, he talks about the Shabazz going into the tropical steamy jungles. You know what I'm saying? And, I'm not going to agree with him on his hair thing when he said the hair texture changed. But there is some truth to a group of people from the East, meaning East Africa, who goes through the Sahel as EV38, stay in the green Sahara when the Sahara was green before the different phase changes start to occur, become EM2 in the wet Sahara. Some of them develop sickle cell to fight off malaria because it's beneficial. Then later on, they become the Proto-Mendes. And then later on, they become, before you get the Yoruba. And then you get these Proto-Bantu speakers, which later on, they later become that. But before we get into tropical West Africa, guess who's there by themselves before we get down there? The A and B markers. People like the Pygmies and hunter-gathering populations that was down there. So EV38 in the form of EM2 takes over tropical West Africa, and it takes it from these populations that's down there. These old hunter-gatherers and these older pygmy groups that was down there prior before us. But before that, we came from East Africa. The E mark itself, EV38. And before that, its predecessor, EP2. They also found EP2 amongst the Natufian fossils that they just found. They abstracted DNA. The Natufians were in the Levant. Most of the Natufians paternally was EM78, certain branches of EM78, EP2, EZA81. They were all E'd up paternally, just as well as our Iberian Marusian cousins who were paternally So if you want to get into the oldest E, there's a possibility that E developed in Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia was green. You're talking about 70,000, 62.3 thousand years ago when it developed from DE, which came from haplogroup CTM168.
Jeez. Hopefully, G consciousness let me know if that answers your question. But goddamn. I'm gonna do some screen sharing in a hot second, and I'm gonna get my brother just to quickly, just elucidate certain things, and this kind of ties in exactly with what Witness has actually stated over here. And let me just quickly go to it. I have got another question that I need to get read out, but I'm going to just hold tight for a second. It says here, is it possible that Ngozi could screen share and provide some visual evidence documents online on the information he is sharing with us? We don't have much information at present to give to you, but just backtracking and kind of just explaining some of the names, such as Homo habilis, Homo habit, boy, I'm not even going to try to wobble my mouth and twist my tongue. I'm just going to get my brother, break it down for us. So right about now, what are we actually witnessing?
Okay, I'm gonna help the sister out. I'm gonna tell her this. I have a lot of information. Like I'm at work right now, so I can't screenshot everything. So what we can do is this. You can go to my Facebook page, Amir Kamara. I'm sorry, Jassy Ngozi, GYANGOZI, and I have a lot of information I'll post up there, and to give you a guide to what's going on. Go to my Team Osiris page where a lot of the information is being promoted. So that I'm talking about. If I could screenshot a lot of the information, I could. If you got any questions, you can inbox me at Jassy Ngozi, and I'll be able to explain most of what I'm talking about, and I'll give you references and sources to what I'm talking about as well. Okay, this picture right here is Homo habilis, which is handyman. This right here is the first man. This is the first human. You know what I'm saying? This right here is the original man. You know what I'm saying? This is Homo habilis. Homo habilis is around 2.3 million years old, 2 million years old. And this is the first man, handyman. He's the first man to start developing complex tools. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is Homo habilis. This is the predecessor of us. This right here goes in between Homo ergaster and Homo erectus. You know what I'm saying? Homo erectus looks just like humans from the neck down. He's preparing to become, well, he is human. He looks like Homo sapien sapien from the neck down. This is Homo erectus right here, which is one of our predecessors as well. You also find him in the Georgia area near the Caucasus and all over the Middle East and in Asia. You find him all over there. This is Homo erectus right here. He's one of the first to migrate out of Africa. This is okay. He's one of the first to migrate out of Africa. This is your boy Homo heidelbergensis. He is the one that gave rise to modern Homo sapien sapien, Neanderthals, and Denisovan. And this is the one that I believe that was responsible for those ghost genes that you find in Nigeria. You know what I'm saying? This is Homo heidelbergensis. He gave rise to us. This is Jebel Ahud that they found in Morocco. This is archaic Homo sapien. Now, if you look at Jebel Ahud, from his face, he looks like a modern human. But if you look at the top of his skull, the top of his skull was elongated. It wasn't like ours completely. And his globular wasn't as circular as ours. It was slightly flat. But from the face down, this right here is the beginning of our face. This is Jebel Ahud, which is archaic Homo sapien, or some will label him as Homo sapien sapien, depending who's talking. So he could be archaic Homo sapien sapien or Homo sapien, but he is us, our form or first form of Homo sapien. This is Jebel Ahud. He just had some slightly archaic features. You know, the top of his skull was elongated. You know, but this right here, if you look at him, he got the flat face. If you look at his mallet in between his face, in between the mouth, it's just like ours. This is Homo sapien, or the beginning stage, and he's 338,000 years old, or 300,000 years old. Jebel Ahud.
Jeez, man, like G. Man, look like 50 Cent with an afro. All right.
Oh yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you do like 50 Cent. That's 50 Cent. Oh, that's me. That's me right there.
My handsome brother right there, you know. I swear to God, you literally look like my brother, you know. You literally look like him. But
we definitely are brothers. We definitely brothers.
All right, here we go. Quick, Zen.
Oh yeah, that's Homo sapien sapien. This is completely Homo sapien. This is us. This is the Khoisan. You look at the Khoisan. This is directly who our ancestor is right here. This is Homo sapien sapien. Khoisan is the first of our kind. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not the first of our kind, but this is an example or image of possibly what Homo sapiens sapiens look like in most areas. So this, but he's completely Homo sapiens sapien. This is us.
Mm.
And again, remember, it goes from A00 to A0 to A1A and to AM6, which is and then AM51. But again, you find the oldest branches of A's outside of A00 near Central and West, because it goes from A00 to A0 to A1A, and you find it over there. What you find amongst the Khoisan, you can find sometimes the AM13, the AM2A, and the AM6, and the AM51.
So if we wanted to find out our haplogroups, how do we go about doing that?
I'm sorry, brother.
I said, if we wanted to go about finding our haplogroups, how would we go about doing that? Because I want to have them archaics. I want to have them A00s going on in my system. I want to say, yeah, I can boast my G. So how do we go about getting our haplogroups?
Well, the closest place you can go, man, you can go to 23andMe, or you can go to National Geographic and find out your haplogroup. They'll give you a sex chromosome and let you know paternally who you are and mitochondrially who you are. If you're L3, L2, L1, I'm mitochondrial DNA L3, F1, B1. I'm paternally possibly EP252 or M191, depending on both companies. But I do know that I am EM2, which is E1, B1, A1. So that you find amongst 70% of Fulani, 80% of the Mandinka, 90% of the Yoruba. You know what I'm saying? Most of these cats are EM2. What terminal branch or terminal snip of it, it can be uncertain, but they are most EM2. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Ramesses the third was also EM2. If we base it off the short tandem repeat test that he had, looking at the nucleotides that was presented, he was EV38 or EM2. Now remember, you got two branches of EV38. You have E1BC and you have E1B1A1, and E1BC is called E1B1A2. That's not M2, but it's still a form of E1B1A, and you found it amongst the Omos, a few Oromos, and it's mostly in East Africa, still in Ethiopia. You know that branch of EV38.
Right. So we've got I am, again, super chats. That's definitely, the way to get your questions actually read out. Alternatively, we'll try to get back to the tags of Titans TV. But if you simply drop messages like this up here, Tie Dye, More Science Show that y'all did 2 years ago was good. All right. Usually I wouldn't be able to see this because it's not obviously highlighted for me to know to read it. All right. But I know what show you're talking about. That was banging. I don't know if you remember, we did a show. It was like a voice recording of all of us. You was on there, brother Ngozi. We had Lord Abba. We had I swear we had Konsu on there. We had a few brothers that popped in. It's on YouTube now. It's like a red background. That was a powerful show indeed.
Oh
Shout out
yeah.
to Ty Dunn bringing that out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So over here, it says here, Ngozi, U.S. Department of Interior says white people are any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Are whites the first to inhabit North Africa and the Middle East?
No, no, not at all. The original people of North Africa were brown skinned. Now, they wasn't dark like they were brown skinned. They ranged. I mean, you gotta look at the zone. If you deal with the skin map, Nina Jablonski, North Africa. Now, Jebel Hub was completely dark because he came from a sub-Saharan equatorial zone. But when it comes to the Tyrian culture that was up there before the Iberian Maroons or the Capsian groups, they were brown skinned. They were brown. No, they were not white. You don't really start finding fair skinned people coming to Africa. You have to deal with the spreading of those farmers who came out of the Middle East, out of Anatolia. Most of those cats went into Europe, but some of those cats did wander their way into North Africa. So okay, that's the skin map right there. That's good. I'm glad you're doing that. Post that skin map again that you just posted. Okay, you look at the skin map, right? Now you got zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. Now you see to the darkest of the skin. Now this right here is the equatorial border where you find the darkest of the skin. South Africa has the same climate that's similar to the northern part of Africa, which is zone 2. So around this skin radius, most of the people in North Africa originally were this brown skin, this darkish brown skin, and that's the skin color of Kalam. That's the skin color of me if you go a little bit further north. And some of them were a little bit lighter, but they were mostly brown. They are not the original. They were not white. Those whiter skin. Now this is a recent map of skin pigmentation based off what it should be. Now Homo sapiens sapien developed originally in those darker spots, which is where you find a darker pigmentation at. So what I'm saying is that the original North Africans were brown skinned. Now, when they start becoming fair skinned, we have to understand what's going on. North Africa is an unrested zone. They have unrested genes. So these cats leave from out of East Africa. We're going to get into the halfling cultures. And then we're going to get into EV68, which gave rise to EM78 around northern Sudan. And then as northern Sudan, they migrate. Now, North Africa at one point was vacant. The Tyrian culture died out. The Tyrian culture lasts between 150,000 to 30,000 years ago. Look up Tyrian culture in North Africa. Tyrian, Aterian, Tyrian culture of North Africa. So they go out, they leave. Different things are going on. You have the Mandel Glacier period happening. You got these different glacier periods, and when it's a ice age in Europe, it's a drought in North Africa. Things become dried the hell out. People disperse, they leave. You got bottlenecks, which is a reduction of a population. Okay, you got this Aterian culture. When you look at the Aterian culture, these people range in North Africa a long time ago. These are dark-skinned people. Now, once they leave, you have the Iberian Maroons. The Iberian Maroons is a result of wandering. Now, what I do want you to show, Brother Kalam, is this. They are a result of East Africans with the EM78, which developed somewhere in between northern Sudan. But before EM78 developed in Sudan, it was EV68, which came from the earlier EM215, which developed out of the Horn. These are brown-skinned people. These are the same people that built Napata Playa. These are the same people that developed, they were in the Green Sahara at one time, that were the Capsian groups. They merged with these wandering Near Eastern or Eurasians that back migrated in. If you look up Iberian Maroons and you look up the DNA recently, Iberian Maroon goes from 30,000 to 15,000 years. They recently found Iberian Maroons. They abstracted DNA from the fossils, and all of the mitochondrial DNA from what they found was Eurasian. It was mitochondrial DNA, J, you had N, you had a few mitochondrials. Now, here's the thing about these old Eurasians that back migrated in Africa. The closest thing to what an early Eurasian, before the farmers that had fair skin, the early Near Eastern populations look like the people of Socotra. Now, Brother Kalam, if you can type up people of Socotra Island, these people have the most basal branches of Eurasian DNA, from ROA mitochondrial DNA to mitochondrial DNA N. So look up people of Socotra and also the people of Yemen, but we're going to use the people of Socotra Island. If you could, Socotra, people of Socotra Island.
SOCTRA.
No, TRA. SO. Yeah, take out the I and put Socotra. Type up people of Socotra Island. If you can look up the people, type up people of Socotra Island. Put people. Okay. Okay, now there you go. These beautiful people right here that you see are what some of those early Eurasians look like that back migrated into Africa. They wasn't fair skinned yet. We're talking about people that came back in with mitochondrial DNA M1A1, mitochondrial DNA U6. These early people were brown skinned Eurasians. They didn't have the SLC2485. It's their cousins in the far Near East or the far part of the Middle East near Georgia and the Middle East near Turkey that developed that SLC2485. So early North Africans were brown skinned, just like you see on the skin map. That's what they should look like. From the indigenous happening groups who came together with those wandering Near Asians who became the later Iberian Maroons, to the Capsian groups that came back from the north, from the east, that brought the Afro-Asiatic language. You know what I'm saying? Because Afro-Asiatic linguistically develops in the Horn of Africa from the Barrenian groups and those old Niger-Saharan populations that came together, which formed into the Afro-Asiatic or the proto-form of Afro-Asiatic, which goes back 18,000 years or possibly longer if you want to go into a proto-phase before it spread from Proto-Omotic to the Cushitic language branches to the Amazigh and even into our beautiful Medu-Neter. These language families, it all spread. So in the Capsian groups brought that branch linguistically up there before the Iberian Maroons, who I'm certain the Iberian Maroons, before they spoke Afro-Asiatic, they possibly spoke those early Nilo-Saharan or Niger-Saharan languages before the Capsian group brought the Afro-Asiatic language there. Because I know that the Natufians, who also descend from the Iberian Mauritians who were in the Levant, they also spoke either a form of Afro-Asiatic, but we know for a fact that they're descendants of pottery, Neolithic pottery B group, who also have a lot of African signatures with Near Eastern signatures, was also there. So basically, the old Middle East belongs to brown-skinned people, brown-skinned people, because in some areas you find a lack of SLC2485. You only find that SLC2485 mutation near the Georgian area and the Turkey area. And the oldest place that they found the fossils with it was 13,000 years.
Jeez. All right. So you know, a few of you guys are saying you couldn't see the screen share. I'm not too sure where you couldn't see. Let me just quickly double check now. Is that popping up? Yeah, it's popping up. So maybe if you missed out from here, this was Homo sapien sapien. This was the brother Ngozi. This here was the Homo habilis. Say
No,
the
that's
habilis.
no. That's Homo sapien sapien. That's Jabella Hood.
Oh, Jabella Hood. Yep. Apologies. Homo sapien sapien or Homo sapien?
That's Homo sapien or Homo sapien sapien, either one. But it's an archaic form of Homo sapien sapien. But that's Homo sapien.
All right.
And
that is the
right
one
there. That right there is Homo heidelbergensis.
That's it. And over here,
Homo erectus.
is and Homo habilis.
Homo habilis, yes, sir.
I have no problem saying that one. Homo erectus, Homo habilis, no problem, baby. No problem. Homo sapien sapien, no problem. But that Heidelbergensis, nah, I ain't got that powers right there. So I think that was basically it. And then the Socotra people, I think you guys did get to see that. So that shouldn't be a problem. Where did the Neanderthals come from? All right, before we get to that, there was a question. I don't know how you're going to deal with it, but let's just see. I have to catch this later. Loving the data. Cheers. No problem, TDS Dave. Okay, here we go. Unbiased Sports. Salute to you. Says, welcome back, Ngozi. Go in. Where can we find you, bro?
Brother,
yeah, bro. Like, we've been missing you for a long time. Where can we find you?
hey, I'm on Facebook under Jayasi Ngozi, GYASI and you can also find me amongst my team Osiris on the horizon. Go to Team Osiris, you can find me there, and also amongst Jayasi Ngozi, that's my Facebook page. So you can find me there. You know what I'm saying? Anytime, like any of the questions of what I'm talking about on the show, you can find. I'll post the articles. I'll even show the scientific methodology of how they came up with the conclusions that they came up with. You know, if you guys want further notice, we can get into it.
Jeez, the street Sufi movement, baby. Come on, victory's over my enemies. Yo, I'm missing my brother Kufu, man. Where's my brother Kufu at?
Oh, Kufu always around, man. I think Kufu, he probably taking care of his business, probably working, man. But he's always around. I just got done talking to Kufu yesterday, but he's definitely always active. Team Osiris on the horizon.
Jeez, that's my brother right there, you know. Any information on the people of Atlantis in West Africa, Mauritania? Don't know if you know anything about that.
Oh yeah, well, I'm not. I mean, the Sahawi, which is one of the original Maori or Berbers. Yeah, and also our Saunke brothers who control ancient Ghana of southern Mauritania. These are Mandinka people, the Saunke or the Sanunke. Yeah, I mean, that's again, you got to deal with the Bafar, the older fishermen. That's EM2, and another branch which is E1B1A1, and another branch is the later strand of EM215, which is EM81, which is what a lot of those later Berbers brought down from their recent mutation from living in North Africa for so long. But yeah, the original people of Mauritania, like our beautiful Sanunke family, who was responsible for ancient Ghana, who are Amindi people. Those are the people that were there, and also the Sahawi groups of Mauritania. And you also have the Haratan groups, but the Haratan groups can be kind of problematic because it's a result of slavery between Fula people that they got, and also the older population that were also there, and the Mandinka people that they took into bondage. And a lot of this stuff is recent and based off the Arabism that has penetrated Africa. I'm not going to say Islam, but Islam and Arabism works hand in hand politically because it matches up with their culture. So to a degree, you have to be careful with how you deal with Islam when you deal with it. So the Arabization that goes on in Africa actually hunted a lot of people and destroyed the relationships of how Amazigh or Berbers used to be compared to who they are or what they think they are now. Most of these Berbers or North Africans are really just Arabized Berbers. And they mixed with a lot of Mediterranean and Southern European and other DNA composition recently. So it actually destroyed them. But again, ancient Mauritania, look up your beautiful Sanunke family, the Proto-Mindi people, the Bafar, who was the older farmers. They were roaming in those areas first for a long time. And also the Sahawi populations or original Berbers who were responsible for they were also cousins to the Almovid Empire. The Almovids were the later Berbers that went into Europe before after the population that went there in 711 AD. The Almovids, Almorvad Empire, which went up there. And that stretches between Senegal, Niger, Mauritania, and southern Morocco. These were brown-skinned Berbers. But they also abducted a few Haratans with them, who were also of Fula and Mandinka descent, because they took them on, as some of their slaves to a degree in some areas. But we don't want to talk a history. We don't want to talk a history that's always based off slavery, though, because that's not the case.
All right, hold on one second. Right about now, family, I gotta touch on, Homo erectus. All right, no homo. Okay, no homo. I'm saying Homo erectus, no homo. Yeah. All right. We're talking science, baby. We're talking science. So what it is also science. Shut up. We're talking human biology. I know. It's all to do with human. Okay, I'm talking about evolution of man. Yeah, but shut up, Kalam. Anyways, allow me. I was going off on another tangent there. So, the people have been asking, where did Neanderthals come from? All right. A few of you guys saying, why are we missing out the Neanderthals? Where did the Neanderthals come from is going to be the next question, right? But if you guys are on here and you're loving the information, can you hit up the like button? There seems to be a lot of enemies of progress that's just here trolling and hitting the dislike button. So can you please
I know who those haters are. I know who those haters, but they're actually fans of my students, so I appreciate them. Peace and love to you.
You dig? So let's destroy some haters, right? Because you already know when truth comes, falsehood must, flee or disappear. So let's get it, baby. Let's get it. We're hitting some hard body stuff. All right, family. Again, if you want to get in contact with us, you know what you guys got to do. Simply type Titans TV, or hit us up with a super chat. As you can see, Titans TV, it kind of emboldens for me, for me, so I can, observe it and see it and spot it real quickly. And of course, you'll have seen if you hit us up with the super chats as well, it gets real loud, real beautiful for me to just kind of pinpoint it straight away. Got man like Marshall Mathers up in the building. All right. Question for the brother: are the so-called Amazigh today in Morocco the original Berbers? If not, where did they come from? Okay, all right. You know what? This actually kind of relates. All right. So my brother
Hold on. 1 second, King. 1 second. Just 1 second, okay? One
no
second.
problem. I'll meet you out. Yeah, let me meet my brother out real quickly. All right. So, Marshall, I know he's up in Morocco at present. So we're gonna get your question, answered first. Then we're gonna go back to Homo erectus. Then we go to Sophia Films, who says, "Can a black man turn white if he stays in Europe for centuries?" Of course he can. Of course he can. If a black man, stays in America for long enough, and he has just the right amount of resources, right? He could, utilize, how can I put it? A artificial mutation process where you can turn your face from being black into being white. All right. Shouts out to man like Michael Jackson. Oh man. Oh sugar, me and my dry jokes. Allow me. I'm just killing some time. I'm just killing some time. So again, family, y'all know what y'all gotta do. Y'all know what you gotta do. So if you got some more questions, yeah, please tag Titans TV, yeah. And as soon as we get the brother back in, I can actually ask him the questions. I've muted the brother's mic, so anytime he wants to come back in, if he's ready, all he has to do quickly on the mic. All right. Ooh, sugar. God damn. God damn. Listen, we're gonna have something powerful coming up. We're gonna have something powerful coming up tomorrow as well, right? We may just have some more stuff coming up. You know, we've had Netchaneb that's passed
I'm
through the
back,
building.
Kalam. I'm back.
All right, we've had Asai Hotep that's passed through the building as
So you
well.
said something
We now
about
have. Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got the mad scientist, and we might just have the real black atheist passing through soon as well. All right. So let me just quickly get it up. Yeah, so we got a brother called Marshall Mathers. All right. He's calling from Morocco right now, brother Ayub. All right. And he says here, question for the brother: are the so-called Amazigh today in Morocco the original Berbers? If not, where did they migrate from?
A lot of a lot of the Berbers in North Africa do have the Maghreb component, just like a lot of the Egyptians have the Coptic component, just like a lot of the other population have the Ethio-Somali component, which is all related. So yeah, they're partially okay. You know, okay, it's a guy that be on your show so when you be outside at the thing when you outside when you're doing your talk of the tight when they be bashing at the park when you be going in, and I think the brother's from Libya. He's real fair skinned with thick hair, kind of short, a Muslim. He promotes Islam.
Yeah, he's Algerian, brother Shams.
Okay, he's yeah, brother Shams. So he's Algerian. He's actually, I don't know if he's aware. A lot of them don't know because some of my Arabs. He's a Berber. He's a lighter skinned Berber. You have the Kabali group up there that's fairer skin, but they have thick hair. It's not about skin color when it comes to understanding the continent. Yes, they do autosomally have some recent features of genetics from out of the Middle East or Southern Europe, but overall, some of those people are Arabized Berbers. They're Arabized as hell. Even French Montana, the rapper, he's an Arab. I mean, I don't know what his mindset is, but a lot of those cats are Arabized Berber. Yes, they do have some components within that DNA composition that is of the Middle East and Southern Europe, but the closest thing that you can find to an original Amazigh or Berber based off phenotype, if you can find it close, would be probably the Tuareg or the Sahawi that you find in Mauritania. Those groups probably are closest to the original Amazigh speaking people based off their DNA composition because they have a lot of older North African gene components. Now you got to understand something about North Africa. Again, they have unrested genes. When you go into the Assyrian culture in North Africa, those people were completely pure. When you get into the Iberian Marusian, and when I'm okay, we're all Homo sapien. There's no such thing as pure. I'm just speaking from a social constructual perspective. So what I'm saying is that okay, when you go into North Africa, most of the Assyrian culture were completely indigenous. When you get into the Iberian Marusian group, those people were partially indigenous based off the markers that we find, and also they were partially from the Near East. When you get into after the Iberian Marusian to the Capsian groups, these groups are a lot of people that were also in a mix between Near East and indigenous North Africa. And then you get into those farmers that made their way back in. You have to look at the zootype, the species that the people have, their method of farming. A lot of the animals that they have, their animals roam too by themselves just as well as people. Then you got to look at the old green Sahara. And look at the old green Sahara. Look at the Kefian culture and the Tenarian culture. The Kefian culture, which was near Niger, or in the Niger area. So when you look and study these people, the people in North Africa are partially, because you can't say they're not indigenous overall. Some of their genetics is not, and some of it is completely indigenous. And it wouldn't be fair if you said that. It's just like me being an African American. I'm highly of sub-Saharan African descent, mostly, but I also have some features in me that's indigenous to Europe. You get what I'm saying? I can't denounce that because that's who I am. But overall, through my DNA composition, my genetics it comes from sub-Saharan Africa, Western and Central Sub-Saharan Africa overall. and I can't denounce that. You get what I'm saying? So yes, a lot of those Berbers that you find, or people that you find in North Africa, are Arabized Berbers. They have been Arabized completely. You have to understand that people in North Africa was breeding with people in Southern Europe before, in some areas, before they was breeding with people from the Near East in some areas. Morocco's not that far from the Iberian Peninsula. It's not that far from Spain. Look at it. It's right there. They found fossils of graves of people in North Africa with E1B1B. You have a branch of, like, when you go into ancient Greece, before the Athenians, I mean, before the Minoans or the Macedonians, before they got the and the Macedonians, you find shit, a branch of E1B1B there, which comes from EM78 in the form of EB13, which crosses through the North Africa and near the Balkans and going to Southern Europe. It was up there for a long time. People have been crossing the seas from the Mediterranean, North Africa, and Southern Europe for a long time. So it's always been some type of connection in some areas biologically between these people swapping genes before the Near Eastern population comes in. Now, is the Amazigh culture indigenous to Africa? Completely. The Amazigh culture is ultimately indigenous to Africa, and it developed in the Sahara. It developed right there. It's African. So coloration and certain things shouldn't be looked at and looked upon.
All right, all right, all right, Marshall. Hopefully that's got you, man. That's got you. Hopefully that answers your question. It's, in fact, I'm receiving telling me to say, you know, people aren't receiving, you know, the YouTube notification to say the show is going to be live and all those good stuff there. So again, I ask you guys, help us out. Make sure you just hit up, you know, the shares and the likes and all that good stuff, because people aren't receiving notifications. If you're subscribed already, okay. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. But if you are already subscribed, please, there is a bell icon kind of at the bottom, hopefully to the right, if I remember correctly. Go there, just hit the bell icon, right? And hopefully that way you're going to be able to have notifications coming up on your YouTube app at home or in your phone. Right? Best way to help you guys out. There's a question here from Sister Lexi, who says, where did the Neanderthals come from?
Well, Neanderthal ultimately came from Africa. His predecessor or forefather was Homo heidelbergensis, the same one who gave birth to us. The reason why they call these people Neanderthals, because the first place the anthropologists and archaeologists and anthropologists found these fossils was in the Neanderthal Valley in Germany. And you know what they do is, when they find fossils somewhere, they label it as that first. Like they found the Homo Georgian, Demonancy. They found it near the Demonancy caves near the Georgian area. These are technically Homo erectus, but they classified it as the Georgian man, or Homo Demonancy. So the thing is, with Neanderthal, they found the fossils first based in that area of of the Neanderthal Valley, and they gave it the title Homo neanderthalis, which Neanderthal was completely human, but he was archaic human. And the thing is about him is that his forefathers came from out of Africa, Homo heidelbergensis, the same human that gave birth to Homo sapiens sapiens, and the same human that gave birth to Homo denisovans. So ultimately, Homo neanderthalis comes from out of Africa.
All right. So you know what? I actually want to move on to the theological aspect of the show. So far, we've been jumping into paleontology, biology, I don't know, genetics, all sorts. We're going everywhere, right? But I want to jump into the theology aspect of the show. This is the second half of the show. Let me quickly get this question though, because Sophia Films did have a question. It says here, can a black man turn white if he stays in Europe for centuries?
Could a black man do what?
Turn white if he stays in Europe for centuries?
It take longer than centuries. It take thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? Brother Kalam is in England, and he's a black man. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, no.
I've got one way. I've got one way, right? You know, origins of the species. What did Darwin talk about? You know, there's natural selection.
Correct.
And you can select based upon sex. So
yes,
right about now, you know, white women are looking hella sexy right about now.
Now listen, yeah. Now here's the thing: when you deal with sexual selection and positive selection and natural selection. So yes, if you get a black man, and it happened amongst white people and black people, if you get a white man and he breeds with black women, and he keeps giving birth to boys for 300 to 400 years. eventually you'll see black men. You have African American men who's only been here for 400 years that's walking around here with Y chromosomes that go back to Europe. Autosomally, they might be more African, but paternally, it shows that their deep ancestral lineage goes back to Europe. The same thing when you look at the Hausa, Hausa, in Cameroon and in Chad and in northern Nigeria. They have a ancient Eurasian paternal lineage, R1BVA8, that's been probably in Africa for 6,000 years or 5,400 years. Looking at them today, they look like every other black African. Autosomally, I'm sure that they are mostly of African descent, but paternally, you can see the deep ancestral lineage coming from somewhere else. So what I'm saying is that if you're dealing with sexual selection or dealing with natural selection, if you have a group of people that breed with another group of people for a long time, yeah, you can see changes in a few centuries. Yes, you could. You can see it amongst people today in that way. But doing naturally, it takes time outside of just being with people. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. All right. So, family, I'm gonna jump onto this now. Yeah. Ngozi, do you believe in race and IQ differences? Ooh. All right. Yeah. Let me just jump on this real quickly because somebody did mention this before. John D says, Ngozi, do you believe in race and IQ differences?
No, I don't. I don't believe that. I think the IQ test is based off standards of people that control and rule. Like, for example, if I created an IQ test based off the environment that I live in and gave it to a European that's not used to my type of environment or my type of living, he'll completely fail. And I could say, yeah, his IQ level is low. He doesn't know this. So no, I can't say that because you have people from the continent who like from Nigeria, they're just as complex in math as a Chinese person. And it's not because they're so-called Negroid or Mongoloid or his brain is bigger, because that's pseudo. You can't think like that. The IQ test is completely, bogus. I mean, if you ever been to school and you sat in the class with some of these brothers from Nigeria and Senegal, and, or Togo, these beautiful sub-Saharan African people, based off the so-called social standards, they'll say Negroids or Congoids are so-called, stupid. I mean, if you want to use that, but when you sit in the class with these people that you descend from, these Congoid groups within the Negroid classification or taxonomy, they're geniuses. They're just as complex as people that speak Chinese when it comes to math or dealing with accountants or a computer engineer. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, no, I don't believe in that. I don't.
All right, perfect. So now we're going on to the theological side of the show today. Family, let me know if you're enjoying it. All right, if you're enjoying the show so far, just hit us up with a ton of ones. One. Just hit us up with a ton of ones. Let us know that you're enjoying the show. Let us know that you definitely want to have Ngozi on for a little bit longer. We've been going for an hour and a half. Can you imagine? We're not supposed to be going that long. So let me quickly, bring on the second element of the show. Shouts out to TNT as Greek, baby. Come on, if you ain't ready to subscribe to TNT as Greek, make sure you hit that subscribe button, man. Come on. All right. So I'm not reading out any more questions. The next question I'm reading out is from somebody who is, dropped a super chat. All right. That's one way to minimize the type of questions I'm reading out. Perfect. All right. So now, this part of it is to do with Africans, their belief systems. Did they believe in a God? Did they not believe in the God? We're going to start, discussing Kemet as well, talking about principle and what exactly is that. So, my brother, I want you to just start where you can start, and break it down for us.
I mean, people in our Valley of African spirituality is natural. I wouldn't say it's supernatural. I'll say it's completely super normal. And they deal with symbolic signatures. What I mean is that the deities or divine natures or forces is based off certain situations within the environment and their surroundings. Put an anthropomorphic symbolism or zoomorphic symbolism. Each neteru represents a process going on in nature. It's a behavior. The Africans had the humans had a relationship with the environment, and they told the story. Sometimes you have to create myths to make sense out of life. If you study Egyptian mythology, Osiris, I said from there, Ennead or Theban theology or Memphite theology, if you study it, you can tell that these people didn't look at it from a Abrahamic understand or have an Abrahamic understanding. It was symbolic, based off human emotions, based off human behavior, based off harvest seasons, based off drought. based off certain situations that was going on. So basically, each Neteru represents a formula, a principle. You know what I'm saying? A principle of nature. Or for example, the underlying principle of nature that's undefined will be looked at as Amun, which is hidden. Amun also represents his symbol was the invisible wind, which represents that which we can't perceive, but we know it exists. That's the underlying principle of nature. Ra, which represents the Lord of light and sky, the sun is the symbol of it, but the sun is the symbol of power. Ra is just not the single sun because Ra, the single sun, will be Aten, the sun disk, or Harakati, the sun at high noon, the highest peak. Ra represents power, light, energy, truth, thermonuclear fusion, reality. So I'm not saying that the Egyptians had an overall sight of it being from our modern scientific understanding, but I'm saying it's close. Most of their stuff is symbolic. So I wouldn't call it monotheism. I wouldn't call it polytheism. I will say that it was animism and it was some form of panpsychism, believing that everything in nature has some form of some component of energy that functions or some form of awareness, whether it's a form of proto-consciousness or consciousness itself, because consciousness is a complex subject that even neurologists really don't completely understand, but they're getting close. They don't understand if it's based off the behavior of basic dendrites and synapses or neurons, which is electrical cells fired up based off what's being experienced at the moment, or if it's based off something that exists off the particles, the activity of subatomic to atomic particles functioning, the functioning characteristics or the sense of doing or happening. So with that being said, if we get into the mythology of the Agdog, of the primordial energy, and you deal with astronomy today or astrophysics, and you deal with the vacuum energy, which or the form unformed energy, which is unformed mass energy, deal with Nun, which is the formlessness, or Kuan Kuket, which is the darkness, or Huan Huhet, which is the boundlessness, and Amun and Amunet, which is the hidden. And when you understand that vacuum state and that dark state and that boundless state, this is the undefined reality that we really don't understand that prepares for the Ennead, which starts with Atum, and then Shu, and then Nut, and then Gay, I mean the Shu and Nut. And then from Shu and Nut, you have, the different phases going on until you get into Shu and Nut and Gab, and no, Shu and Tough Nut, Gab and Nut, Asar Set, Nephhet and Set, and then Haru. Now, the stages of the sun is Kepra, Harakati, and Tamu. Now we know Kepra is a symbol of the dung beetle, which means to roll or to evolve, or that which changes, which also is symbolic to the rising sun, the stages of what's beginning, something that's happening. Harakati is the setting stage of the sun at highest peak. Aket, Akut, or Aten. This is what Akhenaten talked about in his hymns to Aten. He talked about, oh, great rising sun, Aten, and they talked about Harakati, which is the sun at its highest peak, 12 noon or whatever. And the second stage of the sun is Atum. So what I'm saying is that these Neterus and forces put an anthropomorphic and zoomorphic symbolism was based off the environment and how everything works. And they put it in these figures to give people the basic understanding so they can have a relation to the processes of nature, put in those forms. Because Neteru or Neter can mean mighty. They really don't know. It can mean, it can be depicted as an axe, mighty. It can mean divine. It can mean power. You really don't know what the term Neteru means. But if we use it, Neter, which can mean power or mighty, represents force itself. So did we have an understanding of God from an Abrahamic perspective of something that exists outside of time and space? Ultimately, no. Our understanding of Neter or Oludumare, if you want to call it that, or the divine, or whatever you want to call it, was based off the surroundings. But there is an underlying principle of nature that we don't understand. Scientists go backwards and forward on what exists prior before the Big Bang, and you'll hear different things from rainbow gravitational theory to the new theory based off the mirror universe that they're saying they don't know, or a cosmic in-plane collision, a collapse that happened from cosmic in-planes which form this Big Bang prior before universe is going into another direction. So what I'm saying is that that's the uncertainty. So you get what I'm saying, and that in itself can match up with the hidden aspect. When you get into Ifa, and you look at Olorun and Ifa is similar to Aten, the god of the sky. And this is Hanun. But then still in the form of Ra, it's you deal with, Ra or Ifa itself, which is symbolic to Tahuti, study the source, which is Ifa. You have before Ludumari, you have something called Akamara. People don't know about Akamara. Akamara can be equivalent to Nebuchadnezzar, which is Lord of totality or possessor of the uttermost limit or possessor of the universe. This is the source. Then you have the first stage of this sun, which is equivalent to the creator or Kepra, which is Ludumari. Then it goes into the second phase, Olorun, and then it goes into Olufi. Olufi is the is conduit between heaven and earth, which is also similar to Atum, the setting stage. Again, these are processes and stages of events that we deal with every day. You experience the Neteru every day. These are processes, these are formulas. You get what I'm saying? And if we understand that we have a relationship with the divine, the divine is you don't see the creator. I don't want to use that term creator, but I'm going to use it from not from from scientifically. There isn't a creator. There are only developmental processes and adaptive processes. But if we want to use this term creator, we experience the creator every time we intermingle. When you create a new idea, talking to you, having this new conversation, we're creating new images of one another. We experience creation as we experience vibration, as we experience reality. This is the process. This is nature. This is the doing process, the happening process. We experience netter. Netter is not the same way as is how a person thinks of Yahweh, you know, some forceful deity that gets angry and have temper tantrums when he don't have his way, or he desires foreskin from little boys. Our processes of netter don't desire that. It doesn't have those type of human components when it comes to understanding the environment and life or nature itself. Nature is ultimately the source of all. And this is the end emblem to all and everything. And nature will have the last and final word. And we put it in a storytelling manner, in our own manner, by creating these anthropomorphic and zoomorphic symbolisms, giving it, animate story, talking about human emotions. When Set killed Osiris and cut him up into 14 pieces, there was something going on in the environment when the Egyptians created that story. A struggle between the pastoralists and the farmers. You know what I'm saying? If we really want to get technical, it was droughts that was going on before the harvest season. So at some point, they said Osiris, they had no farming. Some people were just hunter gatherers and pastoralists before the farming came. So this is a struggle that was deified and put into this formula to understand that process, and also to understand the spring equinox when it rises, based off the Nile Valley. This is the power of African imagination and African understanding of our form of spirituality. It's nothing like the Abrahamic understanding, where they believe in a God that has human emotions and that demands. You get what I'm saying? And some mythologies raw do demand things, but it was based off something that was going on within the environment. Like when he sent Sekhmet down, and before they had to calm it down, he had to get a drunk and turn to Heteru. And this was a symbol based off desire or rage, the rage and scorching heat of nature, the rage of man, and how we should have compassion, the formula of compassion, the soothing things, if we want to work within the environment properly.
All right. Hold on, am I? Yeah, there we go. Oh man. Whoo, wait. Let me know, family. If you got some questions, yeah, for the good brother, let me know. Cause this is mad powerful. So two ways, right? Super chat, one way, perfect. Able to see it, able to read it out, able to pin it up. Second way is tagging Titans TV. And before anybody does that, let me actually, get this out. We got somebody by the name of Why So Religious. Says here, Kemet would not exist today without the Rosetta Stone. All of this is stuff that you've learned the white man. Oh, sorry. More talk about a religion that blacks would not know about without white people. What are your thoughts on that?
People are people. I mean, if you got more of them that's doing the work, figuring the stuff out, I'm not going to be a black person that sit back and complain that's not trying to figure it out. So what I'm saying is that I don't base reality off of who brought it up first. So basically, if you got a group of people that's Europeans that's invested their time in understanding ancient world, and then they turn around and promote it, because see, they don't find this stuff for you. They find this stuff for people that's interested, and it's more of them that's interested in this stuff than us. The conscious community is really small. So I don't think that these white people be lying to each other about certain things. They might they might alter the color of some people and make them look different than what they really look like. But when they talk about what the people were doing and the behavior of the people, I don't think they lie to each other like that. So so yes, Rosetta Stone is one of the things that used to decipher and translate the so-called language of Metanetta. And I don't see a African American or anybody else that's trying to go find it and dig it up. You have people that have classes on it and teach it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that I think that people have a problem with just what other groups of people doing. I mean, you know, hey, they found it, they teaching it, and now a lot of us is getting involved in it. You know, most of the people that work for these white people that's on these fields are indigenous people in the area any goddamn way. You know, this science doesn't just belong to one person. Paleontology, anthropology, archaeology, there's all types of people that's involved in this stuff, regardless to who the people are that sponsors it and funds it. So yeah, I mean, Rosetta Stone did help decipher Metanetta. Yes. So what? And what's wrong with that?
All right. So let me quickly, get some more of these styles of questionings out there. Let's do that. I've been reading that book you present. Nowhere does it say any boom exists from those people mentioned as alleged past sources. Boom. I don't know what that means. But Bar King Repo Team says non-blacks create myths to destroy the credibility of black thinkers and movements. All right. Atom Amun says, is it crazy to see Kemet as like America today, just a big ass melting pot of people from all over the African continent? Yeah, that one's to you,
I mean,
Brother Ngozi.
Kemet was a melting pot for people from all over certain parts of Africa and the Near East. When you look at, again, study them Iberian Marusians, you look at the DNA that was up there, it's Near East and indigenous North African. So yeah, Kemet had, it was a melting pot with so you got to understand, man, some of those people from the Near East that settled in the Nile Valley before Egypt even formed, they were there for so long, they didn't even know where the hell they came from. All they knew was the Nile Valley. It's just like some African Americans who run around here acting confused, calling themselves Abos, and we only been here for 400 years, and you got niggas talking about they Abos, and we know that's not a reality. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that you have people, or some people in Latin America, Latinos, and much love to the Hispanic and Latino people. They are a combination of three. You have mestizos, who are mostly partially European and Native American. You have Criollos, which is the Hispanics who look predominantly white. Criollos, not Creole. And then you have those who are half African and Native, and you got some that's completely black. But they've been up for so long, all they know is their group, that their title, Dominican, Puerto Rican, or whatever they go by. So in Kemet, you had people that's been up for so long. When newer Asiatics came in, they didn't relate to them. They didn't even know who the hell they were. They call them people of the North. They had no idea where they was coming from. So yes, Egypt was a melting pot with people from all over Africa. Not all over Africa, because I'm not going to say that, but when you deal with the people, they were mostly paternally, because you did have a few wandering groups that were from the western part, and there's a lot of reasons to say that wandered back in. But the people that were mostly predominantly, they were similar to people from Somalia, northern Ethiopia, and southern parts, because they had the same genetic signature, that EM78 branch that people need to understand. And some of the mitochondrial DNA was mostly of the Near East. Mitochondrial DNA N, mitochondrial DNA M1A1, mitochondrial DNA I, mitochondrial DNA J. But you also had a bunch of L3s there, and you had L2A1 there. So I mean, Egypt was that. It was just that. You know what I'm saying? It was a conglomeration or a zone of confluence that's been going on for a while. But they were completely African. They were completely Northeast African. That's what they were. And we can't take that away from them, regardless whether they're indigenous or endogenous. They were completely Northeast African. The culture developed right there in Northeast Africa, so they were African, and they had the same cultural way of doing things as other people. A lot of the culture that they had in the Nile Valley developed in the Sahara. Believe it or not, it was in the Sahara before even dispersing into the Horn, or I mean, I'm sorry, into the Nile. It was in the Sahara. And you can also find a lot of that similarity with the Yoruba in some cases. Before the Yoruba, you had other groups. You had the ancient Nook civilization in Nigeria, before the Hausa and all these other recent names that we have. But a lot of that stuff was in the early Sahara before it even collapsed. And these people split up. Like, for example, people would say that the Dogon come from Egypt. But I wouldn't say that. I mean, it depends on what part of Egypt you're talking about. Because if you're talking about a lot of the stuff that you see the Dogon have comes out of the Sahara. The same place where a lot of the ancient Egyptian stuff came from. It came out of the Sahara. The The same way a lot of the stuff, the ancient Yoruba stuff come from. It comes out of the Sahara. All these people exist in the Green Sahara before going into different directions. People go in and out, they'll come back, they'll go. I'm saying it was all in the Sahara. And I think the Sahara is a beautiful place that we should study to see what the people was going and what was going on there. From the Sahara to ancient Punt, which is modern day northern Ethiopia near Eritrea, and that whole Great Rift Valley. Study it all to see what caused this great powerful civilization that we see in the Nile Valley before the Napata Playa. We need to study the old Nubian structures, which goes back 15,000 years. At first they said the housing was 70,000, but then they say 15,000. We got to study the Haplan culture, the Cambrian culture, the Iberian Marusians, the Assyrian culture. We need to study all that and study the different things that was going on in North Africa, the different temperament, the different ecozones, what was changing, what caused them to go into the different directions that they were going in to form into the people that they are and what they became.
So we got here a question: was Kemet an administration of a territory and not a nation?
It became a nation. It started off, I mean, we got to deal. It became a nation. I mean, but it wasn't a nation the way we see it today. It's territorial in the beginning because you have struggles going on in there. You have, okay, for example, I want you guys to look into, and this is a little bit before pre-dynastic. You got different phases of pre-dynastic. You had different changes before Narma going on there. You had different people control different territories and different borders before it became a unified Kemet, land of the black soil, or land of the black soot, or desert. You know what I'm saying? The red land, which where we get the word desert from. He had different names for it. Not land of the black people. That's kind of off. It's land of the black soot or land of the black soil. But what I'm saying is that when you study Kemet or desert, different people control different areas and different parts before it was unified by Narma. Narma he also controlled the border or the dam near the Gaza Strip and certain parts of the Levant. There was also Kemetic territory that we have to understand. His unification wasn't for quote unquote black unification. We understand this stuff was about trade and resources going back into money to a degree. What I'm saying? If I can control these borders from the south, I can control everything that's going in and out of it. You hear what I'm saying? That's what was going on. The government structure, the system, the rulership, the way it was developed comes from the upper part of Egypt and northern Sudan. And before that, a lot of these cats was in the Green Sahara, going back and forth from northern Sudan and splitting. And this is why we get into the Haplan culture, and then after the Haplan, the Badarians, and then the Nakata, and then the structurization of what was going on. So there was a lot of challenges going on in the Nile before you find this unification of this nation or this empire, you know what I'm saying, a Kemet that developed a little bit later. You get what I'm saying?
Perfect. I've got somebody by the name of True Speaker says, if Amun is hidden, then why do you guys make an image of hidden Amun and give a bird head?
Oh, well, you understand the bird head. You also have the bird head, which represents the renewal phase. He's also depicted as being blue, which represents the primordial essence or water or invisible wind. Again, this is anthropomorphic and zoomorphic symbolism. If you don't see Kemet from a symbolic eye, you're going to miss the message. That's symbolic. It's just like in India where they paint Lord Krishna, or when they paint Shiva. Shiva is a giant and he's depicted blue and he got a moon on his head. That in itself represents a crescent moon. That in itself represents the total reality. It represents the clear light. Or when Buddha talks about the anatta, anatta is the clear light. Sometimes you look at depictions of Buddha, he has blue eyes. Now, if you study the Pali canons, blue eyes doesn't mean he literally had that. Blue eyes represents the blue lotus that people use for energy at that time for planting when they used to deal with it. So it represents clearness or purity. So it's only symbolic, not explaining what it is. It's telling what it's like, its attributes, symbolic signatures. So the best way to describe invisibility would be wind. We can feel wind, but we can't see it. But we know it's something that's going on, that's occurring. So the best way to describe something that's invisible is by having wind. The best way to describe power and force and energy and light would be the sun. The sun is one of the greatest symbols that we can ever experience. Without the sun, shit, we don't live. So why not have the greatest representation of power and glory that we can experience to be depicted as the sun? Man can only speak from symbolic signatures. Symbolic thought is what drives man. Let's not forget that. Alphabets is symbolic. The words that I'm using is symbolic. Writing is symbolic. You get what I'm saying? That's just what it is.
Oh, man. Listen, family, all right? We've almost reached 100 likes. So I'm gonna continue in a little bit. All right. So after, all we need is what, 6 more likes, 6 more likes, and then we can continue. But I haven't had any dinner right now, so I'm gonna quickly pop off, have some dinner, and hopefully, if it reaches 100 likes before I finish my dinner, then we could continue the show. But for now, I think I'm gonna go and have my dinner. Let me just quickly read out. What do you guys got here? What's this? The best way to represent something is a language that only use pictures. Okay, so why so religious? Again, let me just share my screen over here. Let me just do this over here. And you guys here just buoyed me because now we've got 102 likes. Okay, that means we have to continue. I'm starving, Nah, man. Next time I'm gonna say, I even know. Next time I'm gonna say the only way I'm gonna continue is with super chats or something, because y'all finishing me. Okay, so no, before we do that, let me see what Passy X actually has to say. And that is Kemet2. You see, green skin colors, that's not family of hope, but shows the power of creation. Okay. All right, why so religious again says the best way to represent something is with a dead language that only use pictures. Ha 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 ha. Anybody want to respond to that, or do we just keep it moving?
I mean, he has this feeling. I mean, he's speaking on a language that's no one used anymore, and at that time, it was very important to the people in the Nile Valley. So that's what they was using, and that's what they worked with. So, ha ha ha. Back to you. It is what it is. But okay.
All right, so we got Gabs up in the building, man. Gabs, what are you saying, King? Gabs, hey, yo, medicine man.
Oh, sorry, yo, what's popping? What's happening? Sorry, shit, I was busy. What's going on, man? Hey, what's happening? What's happening with Ngozi? You good, yeah?
Peace, brother. Peace. Ujasaneb. What's happening with you, bro? Peace and love. Hotep.
Yeah, man. Peace, Hotep to you, bro. Man, just here chilling. I was just listening to you, dropping some bombs left, right, and center. Do you know what I mean?
Man, I appreciate you, beloved. I appreciate you.
Come on. What you say, Kalam? Say, bro, you good?
Yeah, I'm blessed, man. I know this is your guy right now, Brother Ngozi. But before you top it up with Brother Ngozi, yeah, shouts out to Afro Man Raf, yeah. I ain't gonna lie, I'm a straight pagan for this. You're right. He says you're foul for this. He says you're foul for this. How you gonna do a show without shouting me? You're pagan. Like, I know. I'm sorry. We got the big brother, the big homie, yeah. Brother Ngozi, who's on right now, and I didn't get to holler at everybody. So that's what I'm saying. If you guys can help us out by hitting the share link and all that good stuff there, everybody can kind of know what's going on. Man, like Gabs, Mendelson, man, still busy stealing Wakanda from T'Challa, yeah? Yeah? You still busy? Man, looking like Killmonger. Still busy, yeah? All right. John McDermott, love. This is the when you had the big brother, Ngozi. Now we got the big homie, John McDermott, always showing love, always blessing us. Like, love. I'm here saluting you from the top of my head downwards. Salute, love, peace and blessings to brother Kalam. All right. So family, all right, I'm gonna just pop down and quickly go and see if I can rustle up some food, yeah? And I'll be back in like literally 3 minutes. So, Gabs, this is your time. You got an opportunity to ask some real good questions and kind of see what's going on and get most out of goals possible, man. It's necessary. Let's do this.
Yo, what's happening?
Peace, bro. Peace and love. Peace, King.
You good? Yeah, no, I just got my hold on, let's got my boy in the background making the noise.
That's power. That's power right there.
Yeah, sir. Brother Ngozi, you there, yeah?
Yes, sir, brother. I'm here.
What would have been good as well, is if I had actually I'm gonna get my other phone so I can go on YouTube as well and see if anybody in the chat room as well wants to post up any questions, because this is a good time for everybody that's tuning in right now and listening to Brother Ngozi. This is a good time to get any of your questions out so the brother can answer your question to the best of his ability. So what I'm gonna do quickly Let me just get this. All right. 2 seconds. Oh, hold on, 2 seconds. All right, YouTube Titans. All righty. Wyatt helps you. Okay. All right. I can see. So I can see everybody in the chat room on Titans TV. Anybody that has any questions, just put at Medicine Man and write up your question, and I will share it to the brother Ngozi, and he will try and answer any of your questions. So let's get this show on the road. So anyone out there that wants to throw any questions out, the brother Ngozi will tackle it. Actually, I might kick it off. Brother Ngozi.
Yes, sir, brother.
Yeah, so obviously me being a half Yoruba man, my mom's from the Caribbean, Jamaica. Mm-hmm. I've always been intrigued on the whole how can I say, migration of the Yoruba people, you know, talking of the old folk myths, you know, stories to do with Oduduwa. I don't know, have you heard of Oduduwa? Yeah, Oduduwa. Yes, and you know, my uncles and my granddad have shared some old folklore tales about Oduduwa coming from the East Africa and making his way into, you know, Benin Empire, Benin land in that area.
That's right.
Bringing the Yoruba language. I was going to say, what type of information do you have on that on the Yoruba tribe and Oduduwa?
Well, that's they were telling the truth. That's true. When you study the migration pattern, or you study the phylogenetic tree, and you follow the specific marker that most Yoruba men have, I have the same paternal marker based off 23andMe, based off what they say from their short tandem repeats. I'm EP252, which is E1B1A7A, and a lot of Yoruba men have it. And before we exist in Nigeria or in Yoruba land with this specific terminal SNP or this haplogroup or whatever, I'm just using a haplogroup paternally. Again, there were already people in Nigeria, and I want you to study the mythology, not just as well as the story when they talk about where they come from. Yeah. Like, for example, in the mythology of Batala, when he comes down from the chain, which is the ray of the sun, he puts down a chicken and he scratches the surface and it creates the environment. Then it talks about how he created one group of people that was there first, and then he wiped them out because something was wrong with them.
Something was wrong with them. Yep.
Right. Then he created another set of people. Now that's the mythology. Now let's get into the literacy of what's going on. So the Yoruba, before they spoke Yoruba, the Yoruba culture itself, that's a recent term, and I think it's no older than 2,700 years old. Before that, they were somebody else. Yep. So they absolutely do come from the East, and they were in Benin, and before that, they were somewhere else. It goes, they predecessors again could have been the Nooks.
Yeah,
and believe it or not, as much as the Yoruba and the Igbo don't like each other, they both come from the same people. You know, that just split. It's like if me and you are brothers, and I go on one side of Chicago and stay out south, and then you go on the other side and go on the north side, and we never deal with each other again. And then you create your own group and I create my own group, and you might find some subtle differences, but overall they pretty much the same people. But outside of that, the Yoruba are actually telling the truth in their story. They do partially come from the East. Just following the phylogenetic tree and the paternal marker that they have, having that branch of EM2 or just having EM2 period, shows that they come from the East. Before they were in Nigeria, they lived in another part of Africa paternally. They were in the Green Sahara. And before they were in the Green Sahara, they were in Sudan. When it talks about coming from from Egypt, it's not the Egypt that you see today. They were in the middle part of the Nuba Mountains. And before they went in the Nuba Mountains, they go all the way back to Ethiopia. You know what I'm saying? Where the oldest branch of EB38 arose. And then you also have some Yoruba to talk about that in that same story you're talking about. They say they come from Arabia. Now, remember what I said earlier. Base branch of EM96.
Yeah.
Not the basal branches, the branches that branched off base, but the branch base of EM96, which is haplogroup E independently, possibly and highly possibly came from tropical Saudi Arabia. The marker developed around 62,000 years ago.
Mm.
From there, it went back into Africa near Ethiopia, from Yemen through Ethiopia, settle in Ethiopia, stay there for a long period of time, go northern of Ethiopia, cross into Sudan and settle there for a little time. And then after Sudan, it goes into the Green Sahara. When the Sahara was green before the phase change or before the Holocene Glacier period started to kick in, because there's 3 phases of the Holocene Glacier period. So before those phases kick in, before EM2 even branched off, and even before we even developed sickle cell in the wet Sahara,
Yeah.
EM2 goes from north to south and then take over those areas of Nigeria and different parts. I mean, even with the Mindi, believe it or not, the Mindi, the Yoruba, they all they're all part of the same language family, just as well as the Bantu, Niger Congo. We gotta look at what this Niger Congo language family is. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Where's it coming from? The oldest strand of the Niger Congo family is from a Proto Mindi group. So what I'm saying is that if you go back further in time, they do come from the east.
Do you know what?
They,
Yeah. And this is
you
why
know,
and this is why I've been waiting. I swear that brother Kalam could tell you, I've been waiting for you to come onto the show, brother, and drop some of this knowledge for the UK family, because down at Speaker's Corner we have a couple years back, maybe a year or 12 months back. Some of our Somali brothers, was coming down Speaker's Corner, showing that they're the original Kemites, they're you West Africans, you guys ain't nothing to do with you lot ain't in East Africa. You lot just stuck to West Africa. There's nothing connecting you to East Africa. Stop trying to what's the word? Stop trying to leech onto their history and their culture. And I'm showing the brothers that, listen, this is coming out of our history books. This is in our museums in Nigeria. You got the Ogun State Museum, which talks about most of this stuff, but our people out there don't really like to look into it into great details. So that's why I'm glad we got someone like you that can come on and start showing the actual the line, the trail going all the way back. See
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
And you know what's funny about our Somali or our Cushitic cousins and some of our Habesha cousins and some of those Oromo people, they actually were part of Kemet too,
Yeah.
largely, especially under the EM7A. See, they got a funny story too, those Horners or those Sea people, or the Red Sea people or Puntites, because they are a result of the Badarians who migrated south, because they don't even have the oldest terminal snip of E1B1B, which is EM215. They have one that branches off from EB68, which goes into EM78. Some of those dudes go from north to south. So it's not that the Somalians are the original Egyptians. They have a common ancestor that's partially responsible for Kemet. You know what I'm saying? They went independently and merged into their own zones, and they speak Afro-Asiatic, a branch of Cushitic. You got Southern Cushitic and Northern Cushitic. Their cousins are the modern day Bija and the Afar. You know what I'm saying? Linguistically, or the Oromos. You know what I'm saying? Before that, the term Somali or Somali means to milk. You know what I'm saying? These are pastoral nomads. And they also were farmers, like the Oromo people. They dealt with farming and different things too. And
Yeah.
they also have the Natufian component, which is what they classify as the Ethio-Somali component, which is partially responsible for some of those agriculturalists from the Levant that come back in. I gotta understand, those dudes in Levant who comes from the Natufians come from the Cambrian culture, and the Cambrian culture comes from the Moshabian culture, which was indigenous to Northeast Africa. And they went into the Levant, and something happened, and some of those cats came back in. So they got an interesting story. So they are, again, they looking at modern times and looking at what things look like now, and they believe that. But all of us were partially responsible for the developmental phase of some of our ancestors, our cousins, before we exist, were partially responsible, because those genetic signatures exist in those parts of the Nile Valley. And you can even go back to the early Jebel Sahaba grave. And in the Jebel Sahaba grave, the narrative of what they use is bogus. They call it an ancient race war, but it wasn't that. They were pretty much the same people. But the Jebel Sahaba, it talks about two distinctive people getting into confrontation with each other in Upper Egypt. One group they labeled as Afro-Levantine European. But here's the thing: throw out the Afro-Levantine European. They're pretty much talking about Africans with a specific feature, Ethio-Somali looking people who were fighting against the people that were
possibly fighting, because they probably wasn't, because we all developed those features, who were going against people who had a melodic phenotype, or what they classified, they tried to say Congoid or a Negroid phenotype. But all of us were responsible for Kemet. This is why Ursa Ma'at Setepen Ra Ramasumeri Amun III, or Ramesses III,
Yeah.
had E1B1A of, and not just EV38, but you had the EM2 branch of EV38, which is E1B1A1, which represent a phase of some of those people that left from the Green Sahara when it dried up and went north. And the fragments of that to show proof is looking at our Berber brothers, the Tuaregs of southern Libya and northern Niger, that carries EM2 at damn near 40 to 38%. You know what I'm saying? They have it too, before going through the Siwa-Osis and in and back up in Egypt, giving rise to Ramesses III, whose father was Sennacherib. And he wasn't related to Ramesses II through his father's side. Sennacherib was a worker or a soldier. He was related to Ramesses II through Meneptah's daughter. So he technically was Ramesses II's great grandson through Meneptah's daughter, which is Ramesses II granddaughter. Sennacherib wasn't his father. So you had EV38 or EM2 wandering around in certain parts of Egypt, just as well as the overall population that was possibly EM78, and that's a certain, because you can see it still lingering around, which is the same component or same SNP that Somalians have. So they're trying to say something, but they're not overall telling the truth. But we all related to EP2, which is E1B1. And I think that we need to get out of that shit with the confrontation that's going on. It's kind of stupid. And they don't know no better. Somalians, sometimes they think they, from the Middle East and shit, they don't really know no better. And in some cases, it's partially true. They are in some of the autosomal features, but overall, most Somalians is indigenous to Africa, especially paternally. You get what I'm saying? They got more of a 60-40, of 60-30. I mean, 60-40, sometimes 70-30, and sometimes 80-20. They always come out through their DNA composition, mostly Eastern African, over their Eurasian genes that they find. And some of those Eurasian genes or components is really adapted North African genes, because people in the Middle East and some parts of North Africa been exchanging genes for so long. The environment is similar. You can find some of those components that's kind of similar, and it's coming from the North African component. So you got to be careful with that, man.
Okay. You see, I just want to shout out to the family and shout out Brother Ngozi again. You see, you got Big Titan in the building here dropping that facts. I want to let everybody know this is the time that you should be sharing this link, because, especially if anybody coming from the African diaspora, and you wouldn't know anything about your people, your languages, migrations and stuff. This is your chance to come on, post your questions to Brother Ngozi, and he will try his best, to feed you with the medicine. So, so far the brother dropping the knowledge. You see, he's dropping that fire, and I know he's just warming up. He hasn't even got into the zone yet. So I'm gonna go to the chat section now, see what questions we got. Bear with me. I know I might have missed a few. So let me start with Marshall Mavis. So this is the brother Ngozi says, Medicine Man, ask Brother Ngozi if the modern Amazigh, I think it's Amazigh or Amazigh languages are indigenous to North Africa. For example, the Tachit is a Berber language spoken by the Berbers in the north of Morocco. Is it native?
Yep, the Berber Amazigh languages is native. And you know what's funny about our Amazigh cousins is that the Egyptians write them on a wall, and Tamahu does not mean made white people. That's pseudo. That's not true. Tamahus can come in lighter ferrous form to darker form. So it depends on what group. The Tehenu and the Tahamu, Tamahu were the Libyan tribes, and the Tehenu were partially Fulani before they had that name. And the other groups that were in the north, the Tamahu, they were there. But the Tamahu or the Amazigh language, Tamazight or Tchit that he just spoke of, is indigenous to North Africa. Yes, it's part of the Afroasiatic family. Afroasiatic, if we want to use that word, because there's a lot of fusion going on with some people. They don't like using the term because of Greenberg or whatever. Let's throw Greenberg out. Or Christopher Ehret, he still runs with the same model, but Afroasiatic or Northeast African language, or I can even call it my own if I want to get into it, Saharian languages for my own. But what I'm saying is that it is part of the indigenous indigenous Afroasiatic language family, and it is indigenous to North Africa. It's related to the Somali. It's related to the Oromo. I can't say Habesha because Habesha is part of the Afroasiatic language family, but it's Semitic. It's something that partially came back in, but it has the oldest clades of Semitic, because Proto-Semitic itself also comes out of Africa before becoming direct Semitic in the Levant. The oldest strands of Semitic is in the southern Semitic languages that you find in Yemen and certain parts of Socotra. But that's also part of the Afro-Asiatic language family. And I'm just using that term because that's what makes most sense. So Amazigh is indigenous to North Africa, that language, that Berber language. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Now, did it get certain features from other people? Because you got a Germanic phase that invaded 429 AD. The Germans came. All types of people have been breeding. The Phoenicians came in 700 BC with Ditto Bel. This is what gave birth to Hannibal. Hannibal means one glory of Bel. He was partially Phoenician, and indigenous Amazigh. So different people have been going in and out of there for a long time. So if you really look at North Africa, they have unrested genes autosomally, and their paternal marker, the Berber marker, which is EM81, that's the last strand of E1B1B, and that's a late strand. That branch is only, that subclade or terminal snip is only 2,000 years old. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's funny.
Yeah. You see, Bob Ngozi again dropping that heat. We got questions flying in. Sophia Film says at Gap, what kind of secrets are hidden under the Sahara, to Brother Ngozi?
Oh man, it's a lot of stuff in the Sahara. It's stuff that they haven't even found. I know they found they found tools there. They found one of the oldest predecessors of our species, Sahelanthropithecus, which was the predecessor before Ardipithecus or Australopithecus. I mean, the Sahara got a lot of stuff there. The Garamantes used to roam the Sahara. Gaddafi was talking about some of the tools and fossils that they found in the Libyan desert. Man, the Sahara is amazing. The Kefians and the Tenarians. The Tenarians were mostly in they went to the Niger area, Niger parts, but they were all in that Sahara. It used to be green. I mean, you find a lot of stuff in the Sahara that we haven't discovered yet. And based off my independent research, a lot of the stuff in Kemet that leaked into Kemet came out of the Sahara. Some of the Neterus, you find some of the oldest depictions of Ampu in the Sahara. You find, like, if you look at the Black Libyan mummy and study the Black Libyan mummy, before the mummification process, you find old depictions of Ampu. And the jackal is very important, that dog, because that jackal, the reason why he's the lord of the underworld, because this underlying principle, if you ever notice, dogs know how to find their way home. The wandering aspect of the dog, the canine, the way it wanders itself, it can always find its way back. So he was the perfect zoomorphic guide to guide us subconsciously in some way into the underworld. You know what I'm saying? That jackal. And it roamed from the Sahara into Egypt. So that's why it's important for us to understand that powerful part of the Sahara. Even Amun, a lot of the old Amazighs or Berbers used to worship Amun. Possibly a little bit before it even leaked into the Nile. It was already lingering in the Sahara. A lot of those zoo types you find in the Sahara before you find in the Nile Valley itself.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Thank you, brother. Next question is coming from Mansa Musa. It says, at Gabs, ask Brother Ngozi, did the Egyptians speak a Bantu language?
No, they didn't. They didn't speak a Bantu language. They did not speak a Bantu language. They spoke, their language family was part of the Afro-Asiatic language family. The Afro-Asiatic family that no longer exists. The closest thing we find to it is Coptic, which comes from Demotic. And before Demotic, you got, the writing Heretic script, but Coptic is closely related. But when you deal with Coptic to me is kind of funny because it has a lot of Greek components in it. Most of the letters is Greek, but certain signatures of it is indigenous, and they still classify it and label it as Afro-Asiatic. It's just like when you look at the Jewish language, and I hate when Jews say stuff like you're anti-Semitic, but the Jewish language is Yiddish, and Yiddish is part of the Indo-European language family, but it has some Semitic Afro-Asiatic features, but they still classify themselves as Semitic, but I don't want to go deep into that. So what I'm saying is that no, the Egyptians did not speak Bantu language. No, they didn't. They spoke a language that was Afro-Asiatic, just as well as the Hausa, Hausa, speak an Afro-Asiatic language, Chadic language. The Berber speak an Afro-Asiatic language. The Somali, the Romo, the Afar, the Bija, they all spoke an Afro-Asiatic language family. Now, are these languages related? So you gotta understand, Bantu is probably one of the last language families that developed within the Niger-Congo language family. One of the oldest branches within the Niger-Congo language family possibly is Proto-Mindi. You know what I'm saying? You have Alaska Congo, Volta Congo, you know what I'm saying? Bantoid Congo. You got these different strands of different language families within the larger Niger Congo language family. So Bantu linguistically wouldn't be that old. Now, do some of the components of Bantu exists prior before Bantu, because you got a proto-Bantu language family that existed before. We understand what the fuck is Niger-Congo language family? How did this thing happen? And that's why it's important for us to study old Niger-Saharan languages. And before Niger-Saharan, you might find some relation between Nilotic and Niger-Congo, because before that you have the Kodofian languages that developed, the Kodofans, which developed in the Nuba Mountains in Sudan. Now we got to understand, Sudan is also part of Kemet. You know what I'm saying? Kemet is just not the Egyptos that you find today that labels that part of Egypt. All of that zone is Kemet, if you want to be technical. So what I'm saying is that is the Afro-Asiatic language family related to other African languages? Yes, it is. You find Nilo-Saharan features in it, and you can find some Niger-Congo language features in it. But we got to understand, how old is Niger-Congo? And I'm here to say, based off time, linguistically, Afro-Asiatic, if we want to use that word, that language family itself is older than Niger-Congo language family. Niger-Congo language family is old, but it might not be as old as Afro-Asiatic. Nilo-Saharan is also old. We got to remember, Niger-Saharan split and give rise to the Niger-Congo and the Nilo-Saharan. But you also have this Afro-Asiatic that develops itself from some form of, I don't know, possibly the old human overall language family, Boranian, which merged with something else, with some form of Niger-Saharan, which merged somewhere in the eastern part of Africa, splitting and going into its own direction, developing into their own language families itself. The closest language family out of all languages within Africa, the closest to the oldest, the closest to the oldest, the closest to the oldest. I'm not saying it's the oldest, but the closest to the oldest would be, again, like I said earlier, the Khoisan languages.
Wait, yeah, Khoisan. Yep. Okay. We're going. We're moving. People are flooding in with questions. We got another one. This is a one from Everything is Everything. He says, and Medicine Man asked Brother Ngozi, did we come from monkeys? I just came. Maybe I missed him talking about it. So his question is, did we come from monkeys, Brother Ngozi?
No. We don't come from monkeys. Not at all. Listen, I want to get this correct. Chimpanzees are not monkeys. Gorillas are not monkeys. Orangutans are not monkeys. Bonobo chimps are not monkeys. They are all great apes like we are. You know what I'm saying? We're great apes. You have lesser apes and great apes. You got hominid, and hominidae, when you understand the taxonomy of what's going on. So what I'm saying is that when you deal with, we don't come from monkeys. You know, you got to go back all the way. The further back in time you go into genetics, the closer you find yourself related to certain things, the further you go back. So what I'm saying is that us and chimps split around 8 million years ago. Okay. You and a monkey probably split 26 to 30,000, 30 million years ago. You know what I'm saying? You got to go further back in time. The oldest primate, like Achilles, that they found was in China, the oldest primate, or in Montana. And before that, you know, before it goes into that and become the larger apes in Africa, like the, you know, bonobo and gorilla and all that, we split from chimps around 8 million years ago. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, no, we do not come from monkeys. We don't come from monkeys, and we only have a common ancestor with chimps. We don't come from chimps either. A common ancestor that's more recent. So no. And a perfect example, I want you to look up, if you want to question the possibility if we come from chimps or not, because even within the chimp family, we're more closer to bonobos than we are regular chimpanzees. And what I'm saying is, if you want to get closer and deeper into it, I want you to look up chromosome 2 fusion. And understand what's going on. Type up chromosome 2 fusion, chromosome 2A and chromosome 2B that's fused together. And you realize that human beings really probably don't have, you know what I'm saying, 46 chromosomes. There might be some of the 48. It's just fused together like the other groups. So I want you to look up chromosome 2 fusion. Okay. But no, we do not come from monkeys.
Okay, decent. Before we go any further, I just want to give a big shout out to Anonymous One. The brother just jumped in with a big super chat. Slapping that big donation, 500 smackaroos. You know, the brother's loving the information. Also, I would like to remind the family, you know, hit the like button. You know, we got our brother Ngozi, you know, here dropping knowledge with us, you know, sharing his time with us to drop some of that heat. So, you know, keep the questions coming, and I'm sure the brother's gonna keep deciphering and giving you that proof. Let's keep going. Where we at? People say, hold on. People are asking where the Somalis call in, they're hiding.
You said that the Somalis.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Brother, you're back.
I'm back, baby. I'm back. I just wanted to give a big shout out to my brother. I can't remember what country it's from again, you know. who's showed some love and donated 500 SEKs up in the building. That's the anonymous one. Shouts out to you, family tree. All right, we already said, yeah, this is the way that we're gonna be, getting some of your questions out. So, brother Ngozi, I need you. Okay, I need you for this. Give us some solid resources here where we can research haplogroups or haplotypes, migration patterns throughout history.
Well, I want you to. Well, first thing that you could do, man, I want you to start studying Spencer Wells and get his books, Human Journey, Journey of Man. You can also just start studying the phylogenetic tree, and you just look at the phylogenetic tree and understand molecular clocks. Get into molecular clocks to understand the timing of when these single nucleotide polymorphisms develop. So I want you to study the narrative of human migration first, and I want you to start studying Journey of Man, and study also one of our own bioanthropologist, Soy Kiata. He does a lot of lectures. He haven't wrote a book, but he also helped present a lot of stuff in Christopher Ehret books. But as far as studying a phylogenetic tree, if you want to get into understand a haplogroup, just study haplogroups in the human phylogenetic tree. You can type that in. Understand the detail, when it's split, when it's separated, and it shows you like little maps and the directions of certain things of what comes on. But most of all, you can't just deal with genetics alone when it comes to studying the human story. You have to deal with anthropology, archaeology. You have to deal with all of it to tell the whole story, because haplogroups can go in any direction. Again, haplogroups don't determine who you are. These are just deep ancestral lineages. People move around. You can find your marker. You like a genetic company can say that you come from Ghana, but your marker don't come from Ghana. Your marker can also be found in Cameroon. It can also be found in Sierra Leone. Just because the overall population might have a specific marker doesn't mean that it was there 3,000 years ago. For example, if I take you to America 3,000 years ago, the marker that you found in America today that's predominant wasn't here 3,000 years ago. So, it's a lot of reasons for why we know the predominant marker today is R1b in America compared to the old original markers that was here. Colonization. You got colonizations that goes on. You got bottlenecks. So you got to understand the timeline. So you have to put history with understanding genetics. And I think that from our elders that came from Dr. N.T. Julp to Dr. John Henry Clark, Baba John Henry Clark, and all our elders to help us tell the story, it'll put us into understanding the proper narrative of what's really going on once we match it up with the genetics and put it to anthropology and archaeology and put the finishing touch to it directly and completely.
Oh, man. So, you know what, family? We literally are reaching the end of the show. I'm going to do something that is so gracious of me, so very gracious of me, if I must speak myself. And I've dropped you guys the link, okay, to the chat. Okay, the link to the chat is there. So if you've got any pressing questions, right, come on in and we'll make sure that those questions are definitely addressed. Don't miss your one-time opportunity to come on and address and ask any questions, make any comments, right? Whether it's in agreement or disagreement, whether it's a curious question or a ridiculous question, come on in, all right, and ask your question. We've got 5 to 10 minutes. In other news, though, we've actually got Anka Kek coming in, okay, to discuss something that is very controversial. It's going to be midday tomorrow for those of you guys who are on the East Coast, I believe, of America. So that's 12 Eastern Standard Time. But over here in the UK, it should be 5 hours ahead. We're 5 hours ahead. So it should be roughly 5 p.m. tomorrow. We're going to do a show with Brother Anka Kek, the real black atheist from the Amun Ra squad. And he seems to be pushing something that's slightly provocative and conflicting or contrary. And it's called Out of Asia. Out of Asia. That's what my good brother Architect is going to be coming to drop tomorrow. So let me know if you guys will be down ready for that. 5 p.m. GMT if you guys are in the UK. 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. When will Ngozi be joined by Ralph, my brother? Good question. So we're gonna hook up with Ralph. All right, we're gonna hook up with Ralph and see if we can get Ralph. Is gonna have, I guess, based upon the way you guys are talking, he discusses race and I think he may have I don't know, opposite views to the good brother Ngozi. But at the end of the day, let's see who could provide the evidence. That's what we're truly care about. Like whoever provides the best evidence will win at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You know when you're playing like Texas Hold'em 21, you dig what I'm saying? Some people look like they got something good. They got like a 10, they got a 6, they got a 5. You know, 21. All right, cool. But not all 21s are 21s, you know. Sometimes you just need to drop that ace and that 10, and you get the proper 21. You know what I mean? What that means is we both can provide the same evidence, right? But it's the interpretation of the evidence that truly counts. Some people may have a skewed way of viewing things. Some people may have an unbiased way of viewing things. So let's get into this. All right, we've got now brother Khonsu Shes Moon that's up in the building. We've got brother Karnain up in the building.
Brother Kalam, give me 1 minute right quick. Give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Put you on mute. I'm going on mute right quick.
Yeah, no problem. Khonsu, talk.
Yo, peace, man. Peace. Talk with the Titans is in the house. Kalam is in the house. What it do? What it do?
We out here, baby.
Shout out to Team Osiris on the horizon.
On
the big man himself.
Come on.
You know, shout out to Gabs. You know what I'm saying? The brilliant one.
Jeez.
All the talk of the Titans family. No doubt.
Quickly jump on the good brother. Let me meet Virgil, man, so that your mic. All right, let me just quickly jump on the good brother. I like having fun. I got my good brother. Why so religious? All right, let's see. So we are creating words daily to better explain our experiences, thoughts, and beliefs. Yet God or gods informing from a dead language that only use pictures has answers and explanations important enough for all time. I don't know, you know, I think you've been speaking with a lot of Muslims. You know, in ways they're like,
I'm back.
Like, Muhammad is the greatest example for all times and for all people. I don't know if we make them type of claims there. Like
I'm back, brother.
Enough all time. So we are creating words daily to better explain our experiences. All right, cool. I'm with you. Thoughts and beliefs, cool, with you. Yet God informing from a dead language that only use pictures has answers. You do realize, because I know you're trying to be like, whatever the case is, you're trying to be smart with it. You do realize that, the English alphabet and most alphabets out there, okay, are pictorials in the sense that they're not actually, how can I put it? They're symbols, they're drawings, just the same way as in ancient Egypt or the Kemetic Medu-Neter is symbols. The only difference is, the Kemetic version is much more lifelike, representative of nature, whereas the A, B's, and C's in the English alphabet is just derivatives of pre-existing alphabets. In fact, if you really trace the English alphabet from the Latin and going further back and so forth, you can see that there is actually a genetic lineage with the actual Medu-Neter language. Well, that is something that's been proposed anyway. So I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, informing from a dead language. Like, we understand that. We understand the Kemetic, the script itself. I don't know if one could argue and say the language is still living in terms of the Coptics, still speak, Copt, which is a later version, of the whole, how can I put it, evolution of the old Egyptian into the Middle Egyptian to the late Egyptian into the Coptic and so forth. You can still say it's a living language if you really want to be technical in that respect. But in terms of the script, yeah, of course, the script is definitely something that hasn't been operational in terms of writing for quite a long time. And in terms of, what it sounded like in old Egypt and Middle Egypt and late Egypt, it's not being currently spoken today amongst the mass of people due to, warfare and colonization and so forth. but I'm struggling. Like, what is the point that you're trying to make? Because I think you're trying to put this into a religious, frame, which I don't know if I don't know. It's not suiting that whole religious framework, B. But let me quickly go through and read some more. You guys saying something good?
Hey, brother Kalam.
Yep.
Hey, I'm back, bro. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So, all right, cool. Let me come off this, and remember we've got 5 minutes remaining. All right. So, Ngozi, you want to say something, or do you want me to invite people to ask questions?
Oh, they can ask questions, brother. We good, man. I'm with the flow, man. I'm good.
All right. So we got brother Carnane and Virgil here. And if you guys want to ask any questions before we go off air. Yeah, Carnane. Open up your mic, G.
Yeah, man. I want to say, big up the scientists, man. Big up, you know.
Peace, King. Peace and love.
Yeah, yeah, man. I like the data of information. You know what I mean? I love it.
Peace
I love
and
it.
love.
It's knowledge,
Peace, King.
knowledge. Yeah, man.
Bless up, brother. Bless up. Power.
I don't know if I'm misunderstanding. You say something about like the first man is like somewhere from maybe Saudi Arabia.
No. The first humans come out of Africa, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about our specific marker, haplogroup E, that a lot of us have. That mark itself possibly came back from Saudi Arabia. So here's the thing: CTM1668 paternally, again, his cousins or his brothers are still in Africa, which is BM60 that you found amongst the Hadza, Hadza. They both split from BT, right? So CTM168 leaves out of the Great Rift Valley and give rise possibly to DE. Well, it did give rise to DE, but they don't know if DE came from the Horn or if it came from around Arabia. But here's the thing: haplogroup EM96, when he leaves out of the Great Rift Valley, Saudi Arabia at that time was much similar to Ethiopia. It was tropical, it was green. These people had no idea where they were going. They had no idea where they were coming from. They had no idea what direction they was going in. But we do know that haplogroup E, most of its subclades spent a lot more time in Ethiopia to have all those different terminal SNPs or different subclades or those different the different signatures that you see all over Africa. But the oldest of it, which is EM96, possibly developed in Arabia. We can also see it with our brothers or our cousins in Asia, haplogroup D, single-handedly, that's found amongst the Adamanese people and the Sentinelese people. They're single haplogroup D. Now, they did find DE, a branch of basal DE, which means branch off base, not independent DE, or what they classify in science as a paragroup or a tentative. It's uncertain. This mark is uncertain. So this paragroup, a paragroup branch of DE that was found in Nigeria, but it's not the overall original base DE. So what I'm saying is that E, that mark itself possibly developed in Arabia and came back in. But we do know that E filtered East Africa, from Northeast Africa to East Africa, became different multiple subclades, different SNPs of that particular marker, and then spread it all over the continent into who we are today.
Okay. And the one in Asia, is that have to do with India or something like that?
Well, the D is found in India, and it's also found in some parts of Thailand amongst the Mani people, M-A-N-I, of Thailand, and it's also found amongst the Jamin of Japan, and some Japanese have it too, you know, the D marker. But the idea image of what D looked like would be those Angi people of the Andaman Islands, because you know a lot of the people in northern Japan, they mix with those early Paleo-Mongoloid groups or Proto-Mongoloid groups who came down. Those later Austronesian populations and different groups that came down and mingled with them. And, you know, the light skin variant that Chinese or East Asians have is not the same light skin variant that Europeans have. There's different genes that can cause similar features or same features, just like you have different genes that can be responsible for straight hair. You have different genes that can be responsible for light skin. OCA2 is responsible for the light skin in East Asians compared to white people or so-called white people. SLC2485 is responsible for their fair skin. So what I'm saying is that, but the original image of what D possibly looked like, or we know for sure looks like those beautiful people that you find in the Andaman Islands, or those Sentinelese people that just killed that Christian missionary in the Sentinel Islands off the Indian coast recently. And it was a D marker. So E and these split somewhere in Arabia, highly. One going back into the Horn of Africa, and the other group going into Far East Asia, into where the population that you see today. The mark itself is 62,000 years old, but Homo sapiens sapien develops in Africa. Now there is some controversy. There are scientists that spoke on theories before of the Outer Asia theory. This is not a new model. This is a model that was talked about before the Outer Africa model. They found the skull, Dali man skull, in China. But the thing about Dali man, that's not possibly Homo sapien, because he on. If you look at it, I did a compare and contrast, and I matched it up with Babu man, which is a form of Homo heidelbergensis, and I did a compare and contrast of amongst archaic Homo sapiens like Jabal Hood, put them side by side. The morphology, the skull don't even look the same at all. So that one makes sense. And if I'm not mistaken, eventually they're going to find out that Dali man that they found is possibly some form of Homo heidelbergensis that was over there, or possibly Homo denisovan, because they haven't found the skeleton of Homo denisovan compared to they found the Neanderthals all over Europe and some parts of Asia.
Okay, cheers. Cheers, brother. Thanks, man. Thanks, brother. Thanks. Appreciate.
Yes, sir, brother.
Yeah, man. Appreciate.
Greetings, my brother. Greetings, my brother. You sound like greetings to the panel. Greetings to the panel, man. You know, you sound real intelligent, my brother. You know, I'm kind of lost at a lot of things that you're speaking about, but eventually I'll catch up, my brother. I'll catch up, man.
Man, that's power to you, King. You know what I'm saying? Just that, man, do the knowledge, Ak. We here.
Yeah, because the terms like the numbers and all that, it sound interesting and whatnot. It sound like it's about something, but I gotta like go into it a little bit. I gotta study that. You talking about evolutionary, right? Yeah, from my understanding, that's what you basing you vibing about. You building on the evolutionary chains and stuff like that.
Yeah. Evolution, yeah. And I know, brother, you're I think I heard you before, Aki. You're a Muslim, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm Muslim. Well, you know, yes, I'm Muslim.
Alhamdulillah. And our class of I call myself, we call ourselves the street Sufis. I'm not orthodox, I'm more secular. So I don't take the Quran literally. It's more symbolic to me. But even with the evolution, the Darwin theory is not a it's not a recent theory. It was a Mohammedan theory at first. Ibn Khaldun, early Muslim scholars talked about evolution. You know, talking about the phases of man. If you look up Ibn Khaldun, if you look up Al Jahiz, but really Ibn Khaldun, you can type up evolution theory was a Mohammedan theory at first, and you can look more into it. In the Quran, symbolically speaking, it talks about phases of man. Allah created things in stages. That's not literal. That's symbolic. So, and I'm sure the Arab writers, when they wrote that, they wasn't thinking about evolution because it's a religious book based off principles, and most of that stuff never happened historically. It's allegorical, and I know there'll be controversy over that, but it is what it is. But it's all symbolic signatures, brother. So the literacy.
Can I ask you something, my brother? I don't mean to cut into you, but let me ask you something. The evolutionary process, you know, coming from out of the Sumerian text, the Enuma Elish, the creation story, dealing with that. What's your understanding in the light of you having knowledge of that science? Like, you know, I believe from hearing you, you have a lot of knowledge of that science of evolution and the, you know, the hominids and all that, and this, that, and that. What's your like? Give me some type of like, give me something that I could bite on. Making a connection between the Sumerian text dealing with, you know, dealing with the evolutionary process. They create their mythological story of how they supposed to have created man, and try to like bring it into like, if you could bring it into from the Bible point of view, the book of Genesis, into the Islamic point of view. I know this is a lot. I'm putting a lot on you now. You know what I mean? Try to like symbolize it, try to like melt it all together for me to a certain degree, so I can have something to like to think about. You know, something. Leave me with something to think about on that tip.
We have to get into
the Sumerian language, which was an isolated language. No language family matches up with the Sumerian language today. If anything, it'll be Proto-Tamil. It won't be no Bantu language and none of the other stuff that some people say. And Sumerians were Iraqis. They were Iraqis. That's what they were. They wasn't, we're all Homo sapien, but they were already adjusted or adapted to the area that they lived in genetically. Linguistically, Anu means Lord of the Sky. Anunnaki means princely seed. The Sumerian language family is receipt languages based off grain and barley, trade, exchange. One of the earliest, they found out recently, one of the earliest writing of the Sumerian forefather was a man named Cushi, and it was based off his exchange of grain. And this is it was written in this book called Sapiens. Look at the book Sapiens. It talks about the earliest receipt or writing of what they found amongst them. Now, the Anunnakis were really environmental deities like the Neteru. It was based off the environment. Enki and Leo, it was based off the environment. Now, a lot of this extraterrestrial stuff that they try to match is based off some crap that Zachariah and Stitch added on. He's not really telling the actual story about the Sumerian. Now, if you get the book by Wallace Budge, who talked about Sumerian gods, he also had books on Sumerians. It's more similar to the ancient Egyptians or any other people. They had environmental deities putting zoomorphic and symbolic symbolism. And it does matches up partially with the book of Genesis and everything, because a lot of the Hebrew writing comes out of Mesopotamia and the Tigris and Euphrates, regurgitated over and over again, put in different ways. But the Anunnaki itself, Lord of the Sky, is literally the sun itself. Priestly seed is the authorities or the people that control the Anunnaki. Then you had the Anunnaki priests. You know what I'm saying? So these people were basing it off the environment. They talked about seed, grains, and everything. It wasn't a literal story based off beings coming down and grafting us from early archaic humans and all that. It's not. Zachariah and Stitchin and Dr. Malachi York, who regurgitated a lot of stuff from Dr. Zachariah and Stitchin, they added all that stuff on. If you study the actual Sumerian text, it's not as complex as people make it or what they made it into. Is actually simple. You find deeper, complex stories in Africa more than you find over there in Mesopotamia. I'm gonna be honest with you.
See, the reason why I asked that is because it is definitely a stitch between a lot of the creation stories that we have. I was speaking to Brother Kalam about this weeks ago when I was on the show, and we was speaking about, like, I was asking questions about, the water, noon, and
primordial waters.
the understanding of how, and in the Quran it speaks about water also, and a lot of religious folk, they just look past that. They look past the similarities between the teaching stories that we have, because like you said, you can't really view these stories in the scriptures and stuff like that as literal, because it wouldn't be as deep as it is if it was literal. You understand what I'm saying? So when you go into ancient Egypt and you're speaking about how, everything came from the water, and then we dealing with vibration, we dealing with the vibes, you know what I'm saying? And stuff like sound and stuff like that, wavicles and stuff like that. That stuff is interesting to me. It's very interesting to me because of the simple fact it's like a doorway to marry everything together, if you get what I'm saying. Because it seems like everybody's saying the same thing with little different seasoning added to it.
Yeah. Most of your stories and you'll find similarity. People exchange things. They exchange storylines. Primordial waters forming. We gotta understand. The Sumerians were farmers. The Egyptians was farmers. So a lot of the stories, these people were exchanging. Now remember, Egypt never really got in contact with Mesopotamia. They did a lot of their trade with Mesopotamia through the Levant. The Levant was the middleman. Lapis and lazuli comes from the Oxum or near the Oxum River that was being transported near the Levant. Cedar ebony wood comes from Lebanon. So there was a lot of exchanging in between that was going on. So, stories on the way can go backwards and forward. Like you can find a lot of similarity between Akan and you can find a lot of similarity in some Yoruba mythology. These people were near each other. You know what I'm saying? But particularly when you talk about the Mesopotamian stories or Middle Eastern or biblical texts or Abrahamic faith, you're going to find a lot of similarity that's similar to Mesopotamia. We understand something about these so-called Hebrews or these Arabs or whatever. These are Semitic speakers who really descend from Akkadians. And the Akkadians themselves, before Arabic, you had Nabataean script. And before the Nabataean script, you had Mudar, different languages, but you had Nabataean script. And before Hebrew, you had Paleo-Phoenician or whatever. You know, we have to understand that all these people descend from some type of Akkadian. And Akkadians were related to the Amorites who lived in the western part of the Levant. The Akkadians live in the eastern part. The Amorites live in the western part. And the mythology of Abraham, remember, it talks about how Abraham met Melchizedek in the Middle East or near the Levant. We have to also understand the time frame of Abraham. He supposedly went into Egypt 4,000, and I'm saying he's not a historical person. This is all allegory. I don't want people thinking that I'm a biblical pusher, because I'm not. This is allegory. It even says it's allegory. But what I'm saying is that the time phrase that they use is around 4,000, 3,800 years ago. This is the time of the Hyksos, which were those foreign rulers or those Semitic speaking rulers. The Hyksos, these are Asiatics. These are Arab looking people. These are the people that you see in the Middle East today. And he met Melchizedek. But before Melchizedek and the mythical Abraham, on a historical note, you have the Akkadians. And the Akkadians learned how to write from cuneiform. This was stamp receipt language in the Middle East. If you look at the Amarna letters, Akhenaten was writing to the kings over there in the Middle East in Mesopotamia in cuneiform. You know, there was a level of exchange. The Amorites or the Canaanites, they learned their pictoriograph of the alphabet from pictoriograph from ancient Egypt, Medu-Neter. You know what I'm saying? Sinetics, if you deal with it and see the pattern. So these are borrowed customs from in between. So you're going to see a lot of features from both areas going in and out, especially in that Levant that was the middleman between both.
You know, and that's interesting. That's definitely interesting, man, because it's very interesting, man. You know, as I always say, as an individual being born in this time, individual walking in the door of all the teaching stories that we have, we are presented with, and some of the teaching stories that we embrace. You know, it's hard for me to take it's hard for me to like take a fundamental stand on certain things, if you understand what I'm saying, to be dogmatic in certain teachings. You hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I utilize, me myself personally, I try to utilize the goodness and out of all things and apply them to myself if they're effective, you know, after trial, after testing them to see if they can help me. And if they can help me, then I utilize the jewels that exist within them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, it's my studies and traveling out here and living and experiencing certain things, man. You know, it's a wonderful ride, man. Ain't no question about it, man. But you know, what's your understanding about the Hinduism, the Hindu mythology, and how does that, if you can explain to a certain degree and shed some light on the similarities between the Hindu mythology and the ancient the Egyptian mythology?
Well, we gotta understand. Hinduism is really important. Hinduism itself is from the Hindi Indo-European speakers who are also related to those Aryans, or Aryan means noble, which comes from those people that migrated through Iran, and then before Iran, Central Asia, and all the way up to Anatolia. These were invaders who took the land from the Harappa civilization or the Dravidian population that were
Now,
there.
were they white? Were they white?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the air those in the they were some swarthy skin, but a lot of them, they were positive for SLC 2485. Yeah, they were white. But when they merged with all those dark skinned people that was down there today, you look at them, they got piss color. They got that piss regular Indian color, or sometimes they can be extremely dark. You really can't get caught up in coloration. But yeah, they were related to the Yemenayas, the same Yemenayas who came from the Russian steppes who brought Indo-European language into Europe 4,000 years ago. These cats was migrating down from the Russian steppes or near those areas to Anatolia and Iran a little bit earlier. But these are all Indo-European speakers. So some of the deities you find in ancient India before the Hindi language came, when they were Harappa or Dravidian or Tamil speakers, Shiva was indigenous to India. Kali was indigenous to India. Krishna was indigenous to India. Brahman wasn't indigenous to India. So we have to also understand that, and during the time of Alexandria, Greeks had a phase in Egypt. There is a Buddhist Greek period. Greeks had a period of in India. They reconstructed a lot of the deities. They would look up the Greek Buddhist period, but Buddhism is a little bit. Buddhism goes back 2,500 years. The Vedas was created by Vajrayana. You can get a book called the Gita or the Gita as it was, not the Gita as it is, but the Gita as it was. The author talks about the Vedas being created around 2,400 years ago, and a lot of things were happening because of the Greek transaction. Because you have people that migrate from the Ganges that goes into Alexandria and learn how to rewrite their mythology. So a lot of the similarities that you see that's similar to Kemet, it's because of exchange that was going on in between the media man that controlled Egypt at the time in Alexandria. There was a Greek phase in India. There was a Greek phase in India with its Hinduism, and there was a Greek phase of it in with the Buddhism. But remember, the Greeks who are also Indo-European speakers were related in some form of fashion to the Hindus because they were also Indo-European speakers linguistically. There was similarity. So you got to study the phase of India. So what I'm saying is back into you're gonna find similarities like Brahman, Shiva, and Vishnu. Brahman, it will be similar to the beginning of the creator. Vishnu will be the sustainer, which is Kepara. Atum, which is the second stage, will be Shiva, which is the destroyer. So you can see those phases going on, which is the phases of solar activity, really, the different stages of it, from the beginning phase of the dawn of the sun to the highest peak to the second stage. That's what it is. But we have to understand the people that create India and who it was and the phases and what's going on. You got to know that.
Yeah, that's deep, man. I thank you for that information, man. I thank you for that
Yo,
information, brother.
before anything else though, family, because y'all draining the brother, and we need to kind of close down the show. We don't want it to go far too long. But we are going to continue this off air, conversations off air and that.
Man, brother,
family, I hope you guys.
I just want to say I appreciate you, Kalam, and we can shut it down. And I thank you, man. Team Osiris on the horizon, bro. Peace and love, man.
Jeez, love. Trust me. Team Osiris on the horizon, man. Konsu Shesma and Moon.
Oh yeah,
man,
my brother.
like Melvin,
hey, peace, brother Consul. Peace, brother Consul. I had to leave for a minute. I'm glad to see you here too, brother Consul. Peace and love, Team Osiris, brother.
Team Osiris on the horizon, and Ngozi, the big boss. Can't nobody touch the kid, yo. All day, every day, man.
Jeez. Y'all already know. So family, the link has been sent. So if you guys would like to catch us, we're off air. We're going to be off air. But if you'd like to catch us, come on in. And there is about 2 left. And please make sure you leave a comment after this is finished and let everybody know that, today's show was absolutely banging. We've been missing shows like this. Family, we're signing out now. So peace and love. I'll see you guys on the other side. Man.
Power. Peace and love.
Yeah. I just want to ask the brother.